Hello. So, due to a bunch of problems, including uni work, exhaustion, and also technical problems, my stream of Higurashi when they cry Yoigoshi, the bad endings, wound up being a complete mess and incredibly fragmented. So I've decided rather than uploading loads of small individual VODs, I just downloaded them all and I'm editing them all into one big video. What this means is this video is going to be quite fragmented and badly edited, and it doesn't flow smoothly because I'm a fool. But nonetheless, I hope you enjoy, and welcome to my playthrough of Higurashi when they cry Yoigoshi, part the last, bad endings. Absolutely doing this in backwards order. I'm actually going to start slightly before ending one, because there's some dialogue that I haven't seen. So I'm going to start from here, where we made the decision to go help search for Ms. Tawada's boyfriend, and we're trying to work out how we can get out of Hinamizawa. Toby furrowed his eyebrows, but I continued. I thought I wouldn't have chosen it because it's gross, but I guess I chose it to, shock him, I guess? Question mark. God only knows past me's motivations. Miss Sonosaki's car. She's dressed in a kimono, so there's no way she came all the way to this village on foot. Now that you mention it, that's right. Then let's head back to the assembly hall. We need to tell everyone, right away. Otobe's face brightened up, and then he started walking back the way we came at a quick pace. Hey. I stood there for a while, staring at his back. He was walking briskly down the pitch-black road. He was far more cheerful than a moment ago. Arakawa, come on, hurry up. Otobe started getting upset as I stood there, staring at his newfound enthusiasm. Well, it would be easier with some help from the others. Travelling back the way we came was far faster than travelling down an unknown road. I suppose it's a good thing that I'm going to edit a big, long, all the bad endings episode, because I can just cut out that bit where I accidentally selected the dialogue I'd done already and was like, this sounds familiar. I hope we find Kurosawa. I'm sure he's still alive, don't you think? I suppose so. Hearing Otobe's bright voice might have made my heart feel lighter. Huh? Something felt odd about the tone of his voice. A man who was in the very same room as us just a little while ago suddenly vanished, but he was talking about it like it was somebody else's business. Though some of the fear from earlier had eased up, there was still something unnatural about his smile. What's more, how can he declare I'm sure he's still alive? It's like he's trying to convince himself that the man isn't dead. What's with this guy? Arakawa? Hey, Otobe. Why did a guy like you even come to a village like this in the first place? Huh? That came out of the blue. What do you mean? Come on. You said you drove here with your friends, right? Is that really the truth? Huh? I didn't miss the way his smile stiffened. Once I caught up to him, I grabbed him by the shoulder and stopped him. The truth is, you're hiding something, aren't you? Hiding something? Like what? Well, I just thought it was a little strange. What's going on, Arakawa? What are you saying all of a sudden? I have nothing to hide. I'm just a student, okay? Student? You really a student? As soon as I said that, his body started to tense up. I could see the fear in his eyes. That's right? At which school? Why does that even matter? What is this? Otobe quickly moved his umbrella in front of his face, clearly trying to avoid eye contact. He's probably not a college student, or maybe he's having serious problems with student life. Hey, you. Arakawa, what do you do in your free time? Me? I was baffled by the sudden change of subject. Yeah, your hobbies. Some kind of personal obsession. Don't you have something like that? Otobe gave me a strange smile as he repeated his question. Where did this hobbies question come from all of a sudden? Fine, everyone has a topic they'd rather not be asked about. Once again we resumed walking down the road to the shrine. Then I answered Otobe as he nervously looked at me. My hobby is my work. Can't say I dislike my older writing, but I was always interested in the occult. I tried to give him a suitable answer. It seemed like the sort of thing a popular writer would say, but the truth is, I was at a loss as for what I should do with my future. Of course, I wasn't about to tell him that. I was feeling depressed about my current situation, So I thought that visiting Hinamizawa would turn things around, but honestly, I'm starting to regret coming here at all. Wow, how can you like your work so much? That seemed like a rather rude thing to ask. Well, whatever. I suppose that's a reasonable way for a non-working student to view society. I've been interested in mysterious incidents and supernatural phenomena ever since I was little. How about you? I'm a fan of trying out foods at various restaurants. Is that right? What kind of food do you like? All kinds of things. But when I go with a girl, I usually go for Italian food. Italian, huh? Italian cuisine seemed like a normal thing to say. But what's this about going with a girl? For a moment I had a mind to smack him. I haven't gone out to dinner with a girl in years. There are plenty of good restaurants in Kagurazaka, and I had a nice lunch at a cafe in Aoyama recently. Wow. That was unexpected. It was hard to imagine this timid boy sharing a meal with a girl in Aoyama. But how much of the conversation was actually true? If he was the type who went out for a stroll with a girl, would he really go for a place like this? And if that was the case, why didn't he bring a lover like Miss Tawada? Besides, something else had been bugging me for a while. Despite how worked up he got up about his friends all being earlier, he hadn't said anything that seemed to display concern for them. It would have been more natural for him to beg us to look for them, like Miss Tawada did. Despite that, how can he be so nonchalant? As I pondered that, I stole a quick glance at the side of his face. Occupation unknown. A self-proclaimed student who drove with his friends to a ghost town on a weekday. Then his friends were demoned away and the car they drove in disappeared. It's all so hard to believe. So, about your friends. We're here. Otobe cut me off, then fled up the stone steps. Really? Who is this guy? Then I stared at Otobe's back as I began climbing the stone steps. He's just a dude, you know? Like, he's just a guy. Whoops, I did not want to exit out of that. I wanted to save here, the end of chapter 5. I'm not sure how long we have to the next choice point, but the lights in the assembly hall were shining bright. May as well do it to actually give context for the next choice. When I entered the room, Miss Tawada and Miyuki were sitting across from one another. How did it go? Miss Tawada asked with a stern look on her face. I had no choice but to quietly shake my head. Is that so? So, in the end you couldn't find him? Right. We searched far and wide inside sarcasm here, but it was pitch black out there, so we couldn't see anything. Otobe and I were discussing the possibility that he might have been dragged into the woods. Dragged into the woods? By who? Well, I don't really understand that myself. The conversation was turning sour, so I sat down on the tatami for the time being. I wasn't sure what else to tell her. Takumi is definitely still alive. Of course. Though I said as much, I didn't believe it. I gazed at the tatami in front of me and pretended to think about something to avoid making eye contact with Miss Tawada. I wasn't sure why, but somehow I had a feeling that Kurosawa was no longer alive. But I realised that now wasn't the best time to say it. I decided to set it aside for now. I forgot to mention, after this, I am also going to do Police Case File number 3. Miss Tawada, we'll search again tomorrow morning. So, hold up, we can't do that. Huh? If we don't tell the police everything that's happened today, things will get bad. Cars have gone missing, phones have been broken, and people have started to disappear. Given our current situation, are we even sure we'll survive until tomorrow morning? That may be true, but even so. Otobe began to mumble something. I still wasn't sure what he was trying to hide, but this wasn't the time to get into it. Anyway, I think we need to notify the police today. It's an abnormal situation, no matter how you look at it. But there's nothing we can do to contact the police, right? Actually, I thought of a way just a little while ago. And in order to do that, I need to ask a favour. Miss Sonozaki, would you lend us your car for a little while? My car? Miss Sonozaki, who was listening to the conversation from a short distance away, suddenly raised her head in surprise. Right. If I borrow your car, I should be able to drive straight to the Okonomiya police station and talk to them directly. I think that's a much better plan than waiting here overnight. So you have a car, don't you? There's no way you walked all the way here through the mountains dressed in a kimono, right? Ryunosuke, that's not the way to ask for something. The last sentence was essentially my way of asking, you're not a ghost, right? I'm well aware that I won't get a straight answer if I ask that directly. Miss Sonozaki may have laughed, but her face looked dead serious. She stood there without moving a muscle, the sword still hanging in front of her chest. Why is she reacting like this? Maybe she really isn't a human being, but a ghost? So, where did you park your car? On the road in front of the shrine, near the base of the stone steps. On the side closer to the village. I am, like, really tired, unsurprisingly. I finished my last assignment for the quarter today and got that turned in, and I don't think it's very good, but it's in and that's what matters. I've got pretty good grades on everything else throughout the year, so I don't mind. Throughout the quarter, rather. God. Says it screen spacing out. Anyway, because I'm tired, I've mostly been focusing on the subtitles, and I just sort of looked up, and because Shion's making that face, or Mion's making that face, where she doesn't, like, she's got her eyes closed, for a second I thought that she had no face, like the Doctor Who monster that really freaked me out, and yet now I can't remember the name of, and got very scared for a hot second. Huh? Okay, what is it like? Otobi turned to me as soon as he heard that, and then he whispered something so quiet that only I could hear it. Hirakawa, doesn't that sound a little weird to you? What is it, Otobi? We did all that work walking earlier, but there were no cars anywhere to be seen, right? That's right. I parked it somewhere out of sight, in a place that ordinary people would never notice it. Miss Sonozaki fixated her threatening eyes towards mine. That moment I felt a chill crawl up my spine. Impossible thoughts began taking concrete shapes inside my head. Miss Sonozaki didn't actually drive a car here, did she? Mion Sonozaki was supposed to be dead, but if the person standing before me was actually a ghost inhabiting this village, that explained everything. If she was a ghost, it wouldn't be unusual for her to be walking around this village. In other words, Miss Sonozaki didn't come from outside the village, so she didn't need a car. What is it? Something odd about what I said? Something odd? What are you saying? There's so many odd things about you. My palms were drenched with sweat and my throat was painfully dry. Though I had more to say, my throat felt so strained I couldn't use it. My nervous system was shattered by the extreme tension. Can I ask one more thing? Go ahead. You really did come here from elsewhere, didn't you? Arakawa, do you think I'm some kind of ghost or demon? I couldn't respond. It was clearly just as she said. If she was a ghost, she shouldn't have any legs and wouldn't make sounds while walking. But none of those indicators were present. I quietly stared at her while she sat there motionless. No matter how hard I looked, I couldn't discern anything about her true identity, but there was nothing else I could do. Ryunosuke? What's wrong? You look like you're thinking really hard about something. Ryunosuke's that I'm doing it, I'm having a thought meme. I heard Miyuki's anxious voice from somewhere far away. I see. I guess it really shows on my face that I've been lost in thought. It seems like Ryunosuke has Keiichi's problem of being unable to disguise his facial emotions. My throbbing heart gradually returned to normal. For a moment I was at a loss for words, but I boldly spoke up anyway. About Miss Sonozaki's car. Are we sure she really has one? What an idiotic thing to say. How would I have gotten here if not in a car? Are you seriously going to suggest that I walked several kilometers down mountain roads, dressed in a kimono and sandals, just to come to this deserted village? I didn't think anything of the sort. However, what if she was in this village from the very start? That's right, Miss Sonozaki was here the whole time. So in order to disguise that, she had to refuse the request I made earlier. Letting me borrow her car wasn't an unreasonable request. The idea that Miss Sonozaki was a ghost repeated over and over inside my head, and it was getting stronger. Then, what should I do now? Borrowing her car was no longer an option. I had to come up with another plan. In the end, was walking the only option? Down a mountain road with no streetlights on a night like this? Fine. I just have to lend you the car, right? Huh? Miss Sonozaki abruptly rose to her feet as she said that, then began carefully walking forward. The car really exists? No, that can't be. Restlessness consumed my heart as I watched her walk off. Given the current situation, there was a distinct possibility that Miss Sonozaki would never return here ever again. Was she trying to escape somewhere on her own and leave us behind? Or was she keeping us confined here, intent on picking us off one by one? Miss Sonozaki? You're coming back, aren't you? Once you get your car, you're not going to leave us like this, right? My, you're awfully distrusting. If you're that worried, you can tag along. How about it? Want to come with me? Huh? I was completely baffled by her offer. Unbelievable. I never expected she'd ask me to come along. So what on earth am I going to do? Feeling lost, I turned back towards Miyuki. She looked dazed for a moment, but then her eyes widened and she nodded to me. I'll wait here. Mr. Wada, I think it would be best for you to rest here a little longer. Don't you think? Really, it's fine. Let's stay here together. The two of us can wait here until Ryunosuke and the others come back for us. Okay. Mr. Wada appeared vexed by Miyuki's suggestion, but she nodded in agreement. Oh, that's right. What about Tobe? I stole a quick glance at him as I pondered that. He was irritatingly indecisive. The fact that I instinctively wanted to know the other's opinion might have shown that I wasn't all that great at making decisions either. Sure enough, Tobe was looking back and forth between myself and Sonozaki, at a total loss as for what to do. Hurry up and decide before the sun comes up. I'm going on ahead. You guys do what you want. Miss Sonozaki slipped on her sandals, popped open her old-fashioned umbrella, and started walking towards the shrine gate in the pouring rain. Miss Sonozaki, I need to make a decision. I called out to her from behind. I'll go with you. Me too. I threw on my sneakers and dashed out of the assembly hall after Miss Sonozaki, and Otobe hastily chased after me from behind. Hey, Otobe, if you're coming, bring the flashlight. Okay. As he said that, he ran back to the assembly hall rack to grab the flashlight he left behind. Then, I chased after Miss Sonozaki. For a while now, I've had a strong feeling that Miss Sonozaki knows something about our current situation. If that's the case, I won't step away from her until I hear some answers. And I felt that if I gave her a pass for even a moment, something else was bound to happen. I had no idea what it might be, but I was certain that I shouldn't give Miss Sonozaki the opportunity. Arakawa! Leon! Watabe ran toward us with flashlight in hand. The light absent-mindedly swayed up and down, left and right, shining all around. When Miss Sonozaki saw that, she raised an eyebrow slightly. Watabe, point that thing downwards. Huh? Watabe stared at Miss Sonozaki with a blank look that seemed to ask why. However, she just silently walked over to the boy, grabbed his hand, and pointed the flashlight down. Be careful. Careless behaviour like that will only shorten your lifespan. Huh? After tossing that warning out, Miss Sonozaki turned and began walking once again. Otobe looked perplexed and turned to me for support. Indeed, it's difficult to search for anything if you can't see beyond your own field. No, wait a minute. Miss Sonozaki didn't want to illuminate our surroundings. Was it because she didn't want someone to know our location? And who could that someone be? Enough of that. Thinking wildly is even less productive than not thinking at all. As I thought that, I continued walking and urged Otobe forward. When we reached the base of the stone steps, the road extended to the left and the right. The road to the right led back to the way we came from, and the road to the left headed towards the centre of the village. Which way? Miss Sonozaki began walking to the left without saying a word. The rest of us followed behind her. I couldn't hear anything but the sound of rain striking the trees and our footsteps on the muddy road. No matter how far we walked down that straight, pitch-black road, I couldn't see any cars. You parked pretty far away, huh? That's funny. I don't remember it being this far away. Wait a minute, there really is a car, right? Her carefree tone only heightened my doubts. Was Miss Sonozaki simply trying to lure us to a remote location? And was her goal to dispose of us? Good old Hinamizawa syndrome paranoia. This was no time to be joking around. I shook my head to stave off my unpleasant thoughts. I really can't find it. Well, maybe my car was demoned away too. Hey, come on. This really isn't the time to be making weird jokes. Miss Sonozaki, you really did drive here, didn't you? Of course. Even you're saying these things, Otobe. Well, no, I'm sorry. Why'd you even go to the shrine in the first place? Didn't I already tell you? I had business in the ritual storehouse. The ritual storehouse was the building housing all of Hinamizawa's ritualistic tools, but they were rituals in name only. The tools were used for torture. What on earth was she trying to do in a place like that? So you had something to do with the ritual storehouse? I'm asking you to be more specific about what this business was. You're very insistent on prying. Are you really that kind of person? He is journo, so that's what they do. The frustration in Miss Sonozaki's tone essentially told me to shut up without actually saying it. However, I wasn't about to bend to her will, because if I went silent any time that sort of thing happened, I wouldn't be much of a writer. I stretched my bravado as hard as I could and continued pressuring her. Unfortunately, I actually am the kind of person to inquire about the things I find unusual. But the truth is, we've been caught up in some sort of incident, so I just want to clear up the things I'm feeling anxious about. Would you mind telling me just a little bit more? You're better off not knowing. What is that supposed to mean? I mean exactly what I said. Miss Sonozaki's answer was curt. Her expression was austere. She seemed intent on not saying anything more. Then she sealed her lips and continued walking silently. That very moment, a flashlight began swaying erratically. What's wrong, Otobe? Just now, I'm certain something was out there. Otobe pointed his flashlight left and right, searching for something. There was an old tyre laying on the side of the road for God knows how long. Something? What did you see? Just now, you heard a sound, didn't you? A sound? Otobe and I turned our flashlights towards the forest. However, our lights couldn't reach the recesses of the forest. They could only vaguely illuminate the country road and the weeds growing beside it. Is there someone out there? Probably your imagination. Let's keep moving. Hey. Miss Sonozaki paid it little heed and continued walking, though I didn't feel any human presence either. Arakawa. Let's keep going for now. No matter how hard we look, we won't find anything while wildly waving our flashlights around. But it's fine, let's go. I find slurring my words a lot because I'm really tired and I'm beginning to fade, but I want to finish this so that I can start fresh next week with less fuck-ups. Though Otobe continued to hesitate, I turned to my back and kept walking. I could vaguely make out some of the houses as we travelled down the road. It looked like a small community where a few residents had lived. Several houses appeared to be lined up, but I couldn't discern anything about them in the darkness. Even if someone was lurking in one of those houses, it would be tough to find them. That's odd. I shouldn't have parked this far away. Really? Yes, really. As she said that, Miss Sonozaki walked down a straight road running between two houses. The uninhabited houses were all lined up, waiting for us. In that case, let's turn back. The car is gone. That appears to be the case, but why don't we look around a little longer? The tone of Otobe's voice made it clear that he was ready to give up, but she completely tuned it out and steadily continued walking. Hold on, isn't that odd? I don't know what part of the village we're in, but we walked a long way from the shrine. Even if the car was out here, she couldn't have forgotten where she parked it. So in other words, she brought us out here because she wanted to get us away from the shrine? Let's go back already. Shouldn't we discuss this with everyone back at the assembly hall? Discuss? What is there to discuss? Without a car, there's no way for us to get out of this village. That's true, but, well, something about this area feels wrong to me. I don't need you telling me that. I grumbled that in my head, but decided to encourage him and tell him he was overthinking it, annoyed by the idea of simply accepting it. No one's living here, so it only feels that way. You're overthinking it, getting carried away without enough information to go on. There's nothing out there. It's just your imagination. That's not it. Because, hey, lower your voices. Okay. Terror that OBS is going to crash again. So deep within me. Every day I suffer. Miss Sonosaki continued walking down the road as she showed her. Guess whose stream crashed? Skull emoji. I knew it was going to happen. I'm just glad I picked it up, like, when not an arseload of time had gone by. There was something oddly suspicious about Miss Sonosaki right now. Check the yelling hour and there's going to be like 5 notifications saying that I've gone live. Ugh, I cry. I'd reached the point where I could no longer quietly follow along. Hey, Miss Sonosaki. Just how much further are you planning on going? It's odd. The car's not here. Right, you wouldn't have parked this far away, would you? Suppose that's true. I had a bad feeling about those words. Maybe the car really did disappear? Let me ask you one more time. You really did drive here, didn't you? Of course. Take a look. These are from my car. Miss Sonosaki dangled the car keys right in front of my nose. A sickeningly colourful keychain jangled from the top of the keyring. It certainly looked like a set of car keys. So where did you park? In the grass along the nearest house to the shrine. Uh-huh. We walked past that a long time ago, didn't we? That's why I said it was odd. As you said that, Miss Sonosaki walked by the vacant houses and checked them one by one. I understand not finding the car, but why is she checking the houses? Every house was in shambles. I could see the completely dark and quiet rooms beyond the broken windows. An open door flailed to and fro in the wind. The rain continued falling quietly. The hinges creaked as a door that shouldn't have had anyone nearby slowly opened. Hate that? Really hate that? That moment, Otobe dropped his flashlight and the surrounding area was swallowed by the darkness. Sorry. Otobe knelt down and grabbed the flashlight in a panic, but he had trouble getting it to light up. He fiddled with the switch, but it wouldn't turn on. Sorry, I had to check something. What's the matter? Sorry, looks like it's broken. What have you done? Sorry, I didn't mean that. I got caught up in the moment and started yelling. After all, I was having a hard enough time just walking around Ghost Town with a mysterious woman. But to have our light stop working on top of that? The fear and anxiety blended together inside my heart, culminating in a vague sense of unease. I immediately began to regret lashing out at Otobe. If you crash again, OBS, I will cry. Sorry. I shouldn't have raised my voice. No, I'm the one who screwed up. I'm sorry, but you really did hear something, didn't you? Like the sound of occasional footsteps from people running around? Footsteps? I listened carefully. The sound of rain and wind, mixed together with that. Ow! Ow was because the bright light hurt my eyes. I turned the direction of the sound. It was a house. Nobody should be living here, but I'm certain I heard a sound just now. Probably a fox or a tanuki. Why don't we go check it out? Miss Sonozaki started walking towards the source of the sound. In her hand, she firmly clenched the bag containing her katana. Then she stopped and listened very carefully. It's just as Toby says. There's something out there. Like what? Could be a rat. That moment, a shadow moved across the house. Quiet. Miss Sonozaki held a hand over Toby's mouth to silence him. I'm certain that was the shadow of a person. A black shadow is inside of that house. Possible. This is an abandoned village, but that was definitely a person. My knees were trembling. Why? What is this? You too, Arakawa. Quiet down. Then Miss Sonozaki unsheathed her katana and walked towards the house with the shadowy figure light. Miss Sonozaki. Arakawa, what should we do? The hell if I know? We kept a close eye on Miss Sonozaki's surroundings as she walked down the road. Her cool expression made it clear that she didn't need watching over. There wasn't much we could do to protect her. I couldn't help but tremble as I watched. Miss Sonozaki stopped in front of a small, two-storey wooden house. The tin awning on the roof was peeling off, but the front door was still firmly attached. Still clenching her sword, Miss Sonozaki kicked the door open in a single forceful blow. The surrounding area was still quiet. Miss Sonozaki carefully stepped inside the pitch-dark house. Toby and I each held our breath as we watched her go. After a while, Miss Sonozaki came back looking disappointed. There's nobody there. That can't be. I'm sure I saw something. I saw it too. I'm certain someone went into this house, but they're not there now. What the hell is going on? Miss Sonozaki put her sword away, but she muttered something as she did. Our enemies are on the move, no doubt about it. Enemies? I can't say anything more. Hold up. Why can't you tell us? This is important. Quiet down. Do you want the demons to kill you? Demons? At Tobe, Miss Sonozaki and I stood in the middle of a country road, carefully listening to our surroundings. Once again I heard noises coming from one of the houses. What should we do? What should we do? What's that supposed to mean? You guys might very well die. Huh? Miss Sonozaki looked at Toby and I each directly in the eyes as she said that with a serious look on her face. It's hard to tell how serious she's being when she uses words like die. It certainly doesn't seem like she's joking around, but are we seriously in a situation with risk of death? The hell for? How high is the risk? It was completely beyond all imagination. It seemed pointless to think about it any further when I clearly had no clue what was going on. I'll clean up the rats here. What are you guys going to do? Alright then, we'll head back. To the assembly hall or somewhere. But Arakawa, in the end we don't have a car, you know? His comment stung and I choked on my words. That's right. Sorry, but I think our only option is to walk home. What about Miss Tawada and the others? Will they be alright? Those few words from Otobe with me. Big stretch. Let me catch my breath. That's right. Miyuki. She's still back at the assembly hall with Miss Tawada. Miyuki should be nursing Miss Tawada right now, but what if the rats Miss Sonozaki mentioned had made their way to the assembly hall? Anxiety quickly flared up as I thought about Miyuki. If those rats knew that two defenseless girls were inside, they'd attack without hesitation, wouldn't they? I'm going to head back to the assembly hall. I'm worried about the others. Alright, sounds good. How about you, Otobe? I'll go with Arakawa. Got it. I'll have that later. Alright, Mio. See you later. Yeah. Be careful. We ran back the way we came in a hurry. I occasionally tripped over my own feet and stumbled. Without our flashlight, it was difficult to walk down the road just by moonlight. However, the darkness wasn't the only thing making it difficult to walk. I was terrified. Some unknown creature was wandering around the village, aiming to take our lives. That alone was enough to petrify me. Arakawa. Idiot. Don't try holding my hand. It's dark and hard to navigate. Doesn't mean we need to hold hands. Well, is it gay to hold hands with the kid you just met, or the guy you just met? I suppose he is an adult, if a student, while running possibly for your lives. We moved at a quick pace and made it back before we knew it. Pardon me. When we came this way from the shrine, it seemed to go on forever, but coming back took no time at all. Here it is. Arakawa. Yeah. As I rushed back in a hurry, my foot slipped on a patch of mud and I tumbled down on my butt. Ow! Arakawa, please be careful. I wiped the mud off my pants as I rose to my feet. Are you alright? Sorry about that. Let's get going. Just then I noticed the rain had stopped, and I could see the moon between the clouds. As I climbed the stone steps illuminated by moonlight, I heard Otobe faintly shrug, "Eek!" from behind me. What's wrong? Arakawa, it's on your pants. Huh? I turned to look at the butt of my pants. I had a bad feeling about it. Was it just mud? Then he started to speak up. That's blood, isn't it? It's just a bad period, that's all it is. Huh? It was dark and hard to tell, so I cautiously moved both my hands closer to my eyes, and then I froze. Though they were totally soaked, I could tell it was something other than mud, with a distinct aroma like rusted iron, and it was on both of my hands. When did that get there? Otobe stared at me with a terrified look in his hands as he slowly backed down the stone steps, one at a time. I did fall down just now, and then I wiped the mud away with my hands. So that puddle of mud was actually a puddle of blood? Hey, it's not like that. I didn't... No, I don't want to die. Not very good actor. Otobe turned to look away, then dashed into the thicket to get away from me as fast as he could. Otobe? Come on, wait up. Otobe's silhouette was completely swallowed by the darkness. Once again, I was surrounded by silence. Who did this blood come from? And why was there a pool of blood out here? What about Miyuki? Miyuki and Miss Tawada were still in the assembly hall at the top of the stone steps. No way. Did something happen? I charged up the steps at full speed. Something is going on at this shrine. Miyuki, Miss Tawada, please be safe, both of you. I dashed up the steps like mad, then ran through the shrine grate and headed straight for the assembly hall. The light in the assembly hall was still on. Miyuki, Miss Tawada. I stepped inside without waiting for a reply. A fishy stench struck my nose. Miyuki was lying down in the entry hall, with half her face obscured by her hair. Blood was steadily pouring out from her stomach, making periodic dripping sounds like a leaky faucet. This is real. This really happened. Miyuki. I knelt down to check her face. Her lips were pale. I put a hand on her neck to feel for a pulse, but her body was cold and firm. I understood that she was already gone. This can't be true. Why did Miyuki have to die? Miyuki? I tried to gently lay her corpse down, but then I suddenly stopped. I saw something in her hands. A handgun? I tried to pick it up, but the rigor mortis had already set in, so I couldn't loosen the grip on her hands. Why does she have a handgun? The gun in Miyuki's hand felt heavy, and the aroma of gunpowder wafted from the muzzle. Perhaps this gun belongs to her? Were you carrying this when she came to the village with me? Miyuki, just who were you? I quietly lowered her hand and took a look around. The shoe rack was trashed. Maybe they were searching the house? Or the closet and cabinet doors were open and their contents spilled out too. Who did this, and for what purpose? I struggled to soothe my throbbing heart as I stepped into the main room. There were deep red footsteps on the tatami mat. They were big, 26 to 27 centimeters long. These are men's footprints. Immediately after I entered the assembly room, I stopped in my tracks. The closet was open and its contents spilled out. Right next to the mountain of futons was another corpse. Miss Tawada. Miss Tawada was lying on the ground on her back. A huge amount of blood was flowing out of her neck, Dyeing the futons next to her a deep red. And looking closer, I noticed another corpse in the back of the room. Huh? Is this who attacked Miss Tawada and Miyuki? Miyuki resisted with a handgun and fled into the other room, where she took her final breath. Who the hell did this other corpse belong to? I cautiously approached the other corpse. I heard a dry sound like a firecracker going off, coming from the shrine grounds. The next moment, I heard the sound again, and the window in the assembly hall shattered that very moment. The bullet hit the light bulb, so the interior was bathed in darkness in a flash. Who's there? I shouted in the most intimidating voice I could muster. Immediately after that, for a moment it felt like I heard the sound of the wind. I felt something hot between my eyebrows, and then everything went black. The whole thing happened so fast. They must have fired in the direction of my voice. My voice literally killed me. Can't believe this is where I die. And so, with no idea who or what Miss Hanazaki was, without learning the truth behind Miyuki or any of the other people I met here, and failing to unravel any of the mysteries found here, my consciousness faded into oblivion. Sucks to be Arakawa. Yeah, search for Kurosawa or return to the assembly hall. So we are going to return. I think we should return to the assembly hall. This is, the context is that we have just found out that Kurosawa has gone missing, inverted commas. I'm going to turn this down just a little bit. There we go. So we went out to the ritual storehouse. When we came back, we saw Thingamajig, pink-haired girl, sitting sort of in a daze by the gate. And when we asked her what happened, she said that she and Kurosawa had, her boyfriend, had decided to leave. They came outside, saw that the car was gone, and then there was some movement, somebody attacked them. She ran, and Kurosawa went missing. And now we have the decision to go find him or to not. And in this case, I think we should return to the assembly hall. Huh? You're not going to search for Kurosawa? Miyuki furrowed her eyebrows and stared at me as soon as she heard my answer. Somehow it felt like the tone of her voice was criticizing me. Well, I do want to search for him, but it's already pitch black outside. If we go out searching right now, there's a risk even more danger will befall us. Plus, it's still raining. Wouldn't it be easier to look for him after the sun comes up? The look on Miyuki's face indicated that she still wasn't fully satisfied, but eventually she relented and nodded to me. It's unfortunate, but it's just as Ryunosuke says. Can't be helped. I'm sorry. Mr. Wada walked up next to me and lightly bowed her head to Miyuki. Are you apologizing, Mr. Wada? Takumi caused trouble for you. That's all. That's just the situation we're in. It can't be helped. Don't worry about it. Okay. When I saw Mr. Wada's shoulders droop, the guilt started to eat at me. Even though I did believe it couldn't be helped, I still couldn't bring myself to look eye to eye. The rain began coming down even harder. We hastened our pace to nearly a run, and eventually arrived at the assembly hall. We stepped inside the vacant assembly hall and stopped near the entrance of the large tatami-lined room. Huh? That's weird. The light was still on inside the assembly hall. My phone just buzzed, so I'm just going to check what it is. It's not an email from a professor this time. But there was nobody inside. Where did Miss Sonozaki go? She definitely told us she was heading back earlier, so why isn't she here? I took a look around, but I didn't see any signs of human presence. I'll take a quick look around. Otobe frantically looked round outside the doorway, but in this heavy rain and dark night it was impossible to see anyone. That's alright, Otobe. For now, let's head inside and wait. But no way. Was she also demoned away? That's impossible. After all, this is Miss Sonozaki. I became startled as soon as I said that. Somewhere deep in my heart I was starting to suspect that she was involved in these people being demoned away. She's a resident of this village and a member of the 3 families that rule the area. Ultimately, she's a member of the Sonozaki family. A woman wandering around an uninhabited village with a sword in the middle of the night. Moreover, the name she gave us was Mion Sonozaki, who supposedly died over 20 years ago. There are people here who shouldn't be here, and people who should be here have disappeared. Just about everything feels off. Let's dry our wet clothes. Mr. Wada quickly took off her cardigan and spread it along the tatami mat. You too, Ryunosuke. You'll catch a cold if you stay like that. You're right. I followed Mr. Wada's lead and spread my wet coat along the floor. I don't think it'll dry off like that, but I can't keep wearing wet clothes forever. I feel like spreading them onto tatami mats may be a bad idea. That seems like it would go gross pretty quickly, but what do I know, huh? After that, I saw Miyuki taking off her jacket. Creep, Ryunosuke. Something wrong? Nothing. I tried to hide it by mindlessly rubbing the wrinkles out of my coat on the floor. Miyuki had a dubious look on her face for a moment, but then she plopped down on the tatami mat. Once again, we all took our seats around the centre of the assembly hall. The main difference from last time was that Miss Sonozaki and Kurosawa weren't here, and that both of our cars had disappeared. Otobe seemed to be uncomfortable as he gazed up at the ceiling. I too looked up at the ceiling, and then around the room. Huge spiderwebs were strewn across the ceiling and the wall. There were icicles of dust hanging from various places on the wall, and posters for the Onogofuchi Guardians plastered all over the place. Shovels and helmets were sitting alongside the wall. This room really feels like it's from the Showa era. I casually muttered that, but nobody said anything in response. That reaction illustrated how emotionally drained we were all feeling. I imagined the villagers over 20 years ago putting on these helmets, picking up these shovels, sticking these posters to the walls and standing together in their campaign against the dam project. Somehow I felt out of place here. It was disquieting. This assembly hall probably hasn't been used in over 20 years. If the people who allegedly died 20 years ago, or rather if the spirits and the demons who came to this assembly hall, searching for the food... I shuddered as the thought crossed my mind. The demons came to this assembly hall searching for food. Our cars were taken, and our only working phone was destroyed, so now we're stuck here with nothing we can do about it. And this is all the work of some enigmatic individual. Maybe we'll never be able to step foot outside of here. Should we just sit down and wait for death? Oh, Ryunosuke, if you caught a cold, you alright? Huh? Miyuki put a hand on my knee, but I promptly brushed her hand aside. Ryunosuke? Miyuki just stared at me, looking bewildered. Suddenly I realized what I'd done. Sorry, I didn't mean it like that. No, it's okay. Miyuki gave me a faint, half-hearted smile and lowered her head like she was trying to escape from my gaze. Sorry, I was just lost in thought. I turned my gaze downward to avoid making eye contact with her. Miyuki is hiding something. There's no doubt about it. But what could it be? Though I was clearly enamored with her, I simply couldn't bring myself to trust her. But even so, I'd like to believe her. I'd love to believe that Miyuki is a normal freelance writer. But the basis for that was far too flimsy. Why are Miyuki's bags filled with blank pages disguised as investigative material? Why is Miyuki so averse to talking about herself? And why is she so knowledgeable on the subject of Hinamizawa that she can surprise even an occult writer like myself? That's not all. How is she so knowledgeable about the geography and internal affairs of Hinamizawa? How can she know not just the existence of the assembly hall, but even its precise location? The way things are... Just then, the silence was broken by Otobe's voice. The way things are now, do you think we'll be stuck here until morning? Seems to be the case. What about it? What is it? If you've got something to say, say it. No. Then he lowered his head between his knees with a glum look on his face. What a pain. You have something to say, you have to speak up. Just as I was about to say that, I suddenly started to feel like something was wrong. Until morning? Isn't it odd for Otobe to say something like that in the first place? Otobe called the police a little while ago. If that's the case, he should be the person who has least reason to think we'll be stuck waiting until morning, right? But even so, why does his face look so uneasy? Hey, Otobe. Yes? When you called the police earlier, you managed to get through, right? How much were you able to tell them? How much? Well... He stammered and turned away from Miyuki. Apparently she was thinking the same thing. That's right. If the police come here, we'll be able to hitch a ride home with them. So by tomorrow we'll be able to get out of here, right? It'd be nice if the police got here soon. Miyuki sounded non-committal. In fact, she sounded rather cynical. Looking over at Miss Tawada, she was sitting with her arms around her knees and seemed on the verge of falling asleep. Her hair was draped over her face, so I couldn't discern her expression. Miss Tawada, are you feeling all right? She raised her head. Her eyes were open wide, her face was starting to turn blue, and her lips were looking pale. And her body was slightly trembling. Miss Tawada? Fine. Miss Tawada, are you really all right? Miyuki put a hand on her shoulder and held a hand to Miss Tawada's cheek and forehead. You're freezing. Is it from the rain earlier? No, this is no big deal. She gently pulled Miyuki's hand away from her cheek. Please, don't worry about it. Really, I'm fine, so... Miss Tawada shuddered after a light sneeze. That's the first sign of catching a cold. If left untreated, it'll only get worse. You don't look well at all. Could be a cold. We have to do something about it. As she brushed my hand aside, I took a look around the assembly hall. There may be futons and other things inside the closet, and there's a small kitchen in the back. As long as there's a pot or a kettle, I should be able to do some basic cooking here. After thinking over, I called out to Ms. Tawada. Okay, what we're going to do is drop a save, because as we can see, these are both bad endings. Let's go with, shall I get you a blanket? Shall I get you a blanket? It's fine, I can get my own blanket, so you don't... As I stood up and began walking towards the closet, Miss Tawada called out for me to stop, then rose to her feet and rushed over. But thanks to all the fatigue she'd endured, her legs gave out beneath her. She quickly grabbed the back of my shirt and somehow managed to regain her footing. You all right? I can do that myself. You don't look all right at all. Please, have a seat. I'll grab a blanket and come back right away. No, I'm fine. She spoke up in an unexpectedly forceful tone, then set her hand down on top of my hand on the closet door. She squeezed it tight, telling me to stop. Miss Tawada? I can do it by myself. It's all right. After being told that so directly, I had no choice but to back off. But even so, why was she getting so upset about a mere blanket? Her face looked pale as she lightly bowed to me, then slowly opened the closet door. There was a bed cover of some sort on the top shelf, and several mats and futons neatly arranged on the lower shelf. I immediately grimaced as a stench of mildew mixed with sweaty body odour drifted towards me. Closets shouldn't sound that bad, even in a single-person apartment like my own. Where are the blankets? I knelt down on the floor and looked up at the closet. Miss Tawada simply stared into it, not touching anything inside. Maybe the blankets are on the other side? Right. She closed one closet door, then opened the other. There were full cushions and chairs inside, along with sheets, pillowcases and blankets. Just as I thought. There were blankets here after all. Thank goodness. She lightly smiled as she tugged on a blanket. Just then, a cockroach fell out. What? I immediately let back an entire meter. However, Miss Tawada stared at the cockroach with a cold look in her eyes, then knelt down in front of the closet and tossed a blanket over her shoulder. Seeing that gesture, I jumped even further back. You feeling all right? What is it? There was a cockroach in that blanket. Is it really okay to just wrap that around you without checking it out first? You're overreacting. It's not like she'll get sick and die from it or anything. Miyuki giggled to herself, then wrapped the carcass in a tissue and tossed it in a nearby trash can. You really hate bugs, don't you, Ryunosuke? Oh, what did you expect? Exactly how many people out there actually love cockroaches? Probably not a lot, but this one was already dead, you know? That doesn't matter. Cockroaches are cockroaches. Whenever you see one, there are another 100 of them in hiding. Which means that blanket could be covered in them, right? Couldn't be that bad. You're exaggerating, Yonosuke. Miyuki glanced over at Miss Tawada as she said that. Miss Tawada was wrapped in the blanket, not moving a muscle. I couldn't imagine wrapping a blanket from such a smelly closet around myself. I wouldn't want it anywhere near my mouth. I guess she's cold enough to look past that sort of thing. Miss Tawada, are you alright? Wouldn't it be warmer to lay on a futon? Shall I pull one out for you? Miyuki held a hand out towards the door on the opposite side. However, Miss Tawada moved her body between her and the closet to cut her off. I'm fine with just this. Miss Tawada, this is enough for me. So don't touch the closet door anymore. It felt like she was trying to convey that message through the gesture. In the end, Miyuki led outside and sat down next to me. The rain was still coming down outside the window. The assembly hall fell silent. The only sounds I heard came from the falling rain, striking the trees and the muddy ground. I took a glance at my watch. It was already around 1 a.m. Otobe was sitting on the floor with his hands around his knees, then suddenly raised his head. What's the matter? I heard a sound. I listened outside the window, but all I heard was the sound of falling rain. I didn't hear anything. Maybe it was just my imagination. No. But Miyuki, who was listening outside the window just like me, responded in a low, sharp voice. I certainly heard something, and it was more than one sound. What did you hear? Footsteps. Footsteps? Whose? Miyuki didn't respond and instead continued focusing her senses. If someone is out there, maybe it's just Ms. Sanozaki returning here? But Miyuki did say more than one just now. But if that's the case, what then? I'll open the window. Wait, Ryunosuke. I stood up and vigorously opened the window before Miyuki's cries to stop it could reach my ears. The sound of the falling rain grew even louder. Indeed, I could hear the sound of footsteps mixed together with the splashing rain. But the footsteps sounded rough. Miss Sanozaki was wearing sandals, so they couldn't possibly be hers. Who is it? I leaned out the window and surveyed the surrounding area. However, nobody was there. Otobe anxiously looked up at me. Arakawa. They disappeared. Disappeared? I can't see anyone, even though I'm certain I heard those footsteps. Who did they belong to? Was it the work of demons who set their sights on us? Ryunosuke, please close the window. Right. Though I was confused by Miyuki's calm demeanor, I closed the window as directed. We should lock it just in case. Got it. Should we lock the front door too? Yes, please do. I quickly walked towards the entrance. Come to think of it, I probably shouldn't be running, but I was thoroughly spooked by those footsteps. Who on earth would come here? Who did those footsteps belong to? I ran down the hallway, but as soon as I tried to lock the front door, the door opened.
Pardon me, I've got a bit of a sore throat at the moment. I just abruptly choked there.
Oh, Arakawa. The person standing before me was none other than Miss Sanozaki, looking thoroughly soaked. I'm back. Welcome back. I responded instinctively, then stepped out of her way. She took off her muddy sandals and started walking towards the assembly hall. I rushed to lock the door and chase after Miss Sanozaki, or at least I intended to, but unfortunately the lock on the door was broken and wouldn't close. Of all the times for the lock not to work. I took out my anchor on the door, then hurried back to the tatami-lined room. That was a lot of work. Miss Sanozaki wiped her wet clothes with a towel while closing her sword bag, then plopped down on the floor and spread out a scroll she pulled out of her pocket. What's that? It's a scroll, obviously. I mean, I can tell that much. I went to the ritual storehouse for this, but I came back early when I heard someone scream. Apparently this scroll is what Miss Sanozaki was searching the ritual storehouse for. So she wasn't demoned away? I felt relieved, but also disappointed. It was a conflicting feeling. She wasn't necessarily behind the demoning aways, but she did seem the most likely candidate for the culprit. What's wrong, Arakawa? You're staring at me. It's nothing. I was too frightened of her to say anything. Still, I could see the amazing force behind her eyes. What is it? You're acting awfully timid. Should I start calling you Otobe too from now on? Why are you comparing me to Otobe? Sorry. For some reason, Otobe apologized and hung his head. Miss Sanozaki smiled wryly towards him, then quickly made eye contact with Miyuki, before looking at Mr. Wada with a frown on her face. Hey you. Yes? I'm shocked that you can wear such an awfully smelly blanket. Miss Tawada's complexion looked significantly better than earlier, and it seemed like she stopped shivering. Miss Tawada was feeling rather sick earlier. She was trembling. Miss Sonozaki carefully looked over her entire body after listening to Miyuki's experience. Then she beckoned her to move away from the closet and closer to us. You shouldn't be over there by yourself. Come over here. Isn't it drafty and cold over there? I'm fine staying right here. Right here. I don't care about your smelly blanket. Come over here. That's all right. I'd rather stay here. Miss Tawada was huddled in front of the closet, 2 or 3 meters away from the circle the rest of us were sitting in. She was sitting with her arms around her knees. She squeezed the blanket on her chest and frowned at us. You still feeling sick? Miss Sonozaki rolled up the scroll, put it away, and stood up. That moment, Miss Tawada suddenly looked like she was bracing herself. What on earth? What is this girl so worried about? And Miss Sonozaki clearly didn't miss that change in her expression. You, just what are you hiding over there? Move aside for a moment, will you? No, there's nothing special over here. Then get out of the way. A look of panic flashed through Miss Tawada's eyes, and she clung to the blanket at her chest. And then Miss Sonozaki was glaring at her. She held up the blanket to her face to avoid the gaze. After seeing that reaction, Miss Sonozaki seemed to reach some understanding and simply shrugged her shoulders. I see. That's how it is, then. What do you mean, that's how it is? I was about to ask Miss Sonozaki about it, but she quickly put her hand on the closet door and slid it open. The closet door came open, revealing a mountain of futons. Tawada had a back resting against the door, so the force of the opening knocked her onto the floor. Come on, Miss Sonozaki, what the hell? She stared at the neatly arranged pile of futons, cautiously studying them, much like I did earlier. Then she ran her hand under the bed cover, between the layers of futons. Miss Sonozaki, what are you doing? My suspicions are correct? We should be able to find what Miss Tawada is hiding in here. Her hand stopped moving between the futons. Maybe she found what she was searching for. And then Miss Sonozaki turned back to Miss Tawada, a huge grin on her face. Miss Sonozaki? It's nothing. What's wrong? Everyone, don't be too surprised. Even if you tell us not to be surprised, we won't know until we see it. Is it going to be a mountain of cockroaches this time? Even I didn't think that was funny. It was hardly a joke. What on earth is hiding in there? Miss Sonozaki grabbed the bed cover with both hands and pulled it vigorously. And what came from inside was a human hand. The hand of a young man. What is this? Miss Tawada trembled and shocked with both hands held against her mouth, before finally saying that in a shaky voice. It was as if she recognized the owner of the hand. I reckon we're back to having a nosebleed. Just in general. Any tips? Actually, hang on, I strongly suspect. Yes, I think we've read this already. Okay, yeah, we know we have read these tips already. So we are going to save just in case. You can't tell who it is just from the hand, can you? Miss Sonozaki turned and pointed to the hand protruding from between the futon cushions. Between the futons, we found a young man, one who was apparently sleeping here until a little while ago. Takumi Kurosawa. No! Takumi? How? Hi! Mr. Wada rushed over to him and shook his body. But he didn't move, and his skin tone had already turned a dull pale. It was already too late. Takumi? Takumi, Takumi, Takumi. Miss Sonozaki briefly raised an eyebrow and began to speak. It's no use. He's already dead. Dead? Why is he? It can't be. Takumi, why? Mr. Wada clung to Kurosawa's motionless body and spilled tears over the top of him. Miyuki quietly stared as the situation unfolded, but eventually she moved closer to Mr. Wada and turned her eyes towards the corpse. Would you give me a moment? Takumi. Mr. Wada paid no heed to Miyuki's words and continued crying while clutching his hand. She didn't want to accept the shock of losing her beloved boyfriend, but reality was dealing her a heavy blow. Mr. Wada, this is really weird. Otobe? Otobe was watching all this from far away as he muttered that in a shaky voice. Because Mr. Wada said he vanished around the shrine gate, right? Then what's he doing here? Because someone carried him here, obviously. But when? Well, sometime when we weren't here. But isn't that odd? We ran to the shrine gate immediately after hearing her scream, and after that we came straight here, right? So when could someone carry him here? It could have happened while we were standing on the stone steps for all we know, right? Still strange. Aren't the stone steps the only way in and out of the shrine grounds? The rest of the area is a sheer cliff. Then what are you saying? It's fine to have objections, but you need to substantiate them with a proper explanation. If I could do that, I wouldn't be struggling over here. Otobe sounded frustrated, then fell silent. Then Miyuki stood up, gave him a pat on the shoulder, and turned to us as if taking over for him. But it is a little strange, just as Otobe says. Why would the culprit stash the body in a place like this? If the goal was to hide the corpse, wouldn't it have been easier to just toss it deep in the woods? Terrible thoughts began swirling around inside my head. If the assailant killed Kurosawa outside and hid the body in the assembly hall closet, it'd be like they were practically asking us to find it. On top of that, there was a high risk of being spotted while moving the corpse into the assembly hall closet. But even so, despite the danger of eyewitnesses, the killer took the trouble of hiding the body in the closet. In which case, the killer had a specific goal in mind. And that goal was to reveal the corpse to us. To threaten us. Ryunosuke, what's that over there? Huh? Isn't that your cell phone? Miyuki pointed towards the entrance of the assembly hall. Then she rushed over the doorway, picked up my phone and came running back. What was it doing over there? I left it there. Huh? That's not the criminal's handiwork. I left it over there. Thanks. However, Miyuki's expression was looking increasingly firm, and then she rested her chin on her right fist, deep in thought. What's the matter? You said you left it here, but why? Huh? It fell out my pocket, like what happened to Otobe earlier. It's not like I could connect or anything, so I didn't notice. So that's all it is? But Miyuki didn't say that. Her face gradually clouded over as she listened to my explanation. But isn't that odd? Huh? As Otobe's phone was torn apart. So why wasn't your phone destroyed too? I wonder, maybe because it's not able to connect? That's still strange. Otobe's phone wasn't even usable thanks to the dead battery. Kurosawa's murderer came through this assembly hall to transport the corpse, right? The same culprit was responsible for both these incidents. Why would they destroy Otobe's phone but leave Ryunosuke's alone? Well, a terrible thought came to mind and I started feeling nauseous. The direction this conversation was headed in was quite simple and rather cruel. My phone is simply unable to connect. But aside from the battery issue, there's still an issue that Otobe's could. Shouldn't that be reason enough to treat them differently? If that's the case, how'd the culprit know all that? Indeed. Do you think they'd have no way of knowing which phones can and can't connect? Even if the phone didn't get any signal where it was found, there was still a chance it could connect after moving to another location. Which means, this is the work of the curse? Mr. Wada said that, while still holding Kurosawa's body close to her chest. The curse? Am I wrong? This was done by the curse. Wouldn't Ayashiro-sama be able to tell which phone is able to connect? Mr. Wada said that while gazing into the face of her dead lover like he was simply asleep. However, I couldn't agree with her assessment. I doubt it. At least, I think there's a much more likely possibility. It seems strange for an occult specialist to suggest this, but I was hesitant to accept the curse explanation so easily. Another possibility? Right, there's a very simple explanation. All of us knew that particular piece of information, which means one of us is responsible for breaking Otabe's phone. Right, it's natural to think so. But that's not the only explanation, right? We were all in the ritual storehouse when Mr. Kurosawa and Ms. Tawada were attacked. If that's the case, the person who attacked them that broke my phone can't be one of us. Do you understand what you're saying? I understand. That's why it has to be someone else who broke my phone and attacked them. Otabe, calm down. But it's not like Ms. Tawada killed Kurosawa, so you're turning your suspicion towards me, aren't you? Seriously, I'm not the culprit. Nobody said anything like that, right? So can you calm down? Otabe was breathing erratically, so Miyuki tried to comfort her, but her eyes were still carefully watching his expression. Yunosuke doesn't suspect you. If that were the case, wouldn't he have just as much reason to suspect me? Right, Yunosuke? Right. I probably should have said it's not like that right there, but I lacked the confidence to actually say it for sure like Miyuki did. At any rate, we need to organise our thoughts on everything that's happening. Not only was the phone broken to prevent us from getting in touch with the outside, but around the same time our cars disappeared to remove our means of escape. And then Kurosawa was murdered. Putting all that together, I can think of only one fate that this is leading us to. Massacre. Massacre? I don't know if the murderer is a human or a ghost of Hinamizawa, but regardless, the culprit is keeping us here and planning to pick us one by one in this blood bath. So the first one was taken out as a show of force. Maybe the culprit is even nearby right now, watching us and smirking quietly. Please stop making such distasteful jokes. He's right, Yunosuke. You're going too far. Then what on earth is this all about? It's likely as Ms. Arakawa says. Uh-huh. All who step foot in this village are possessed and then killed by the murderous spirits of the dead. First was Takumi and next is... Oh, stop it, not you too, Ms. Tawada. But can you think of another explanation? If that's not the case, then who were you saying killed Takumi? Ms. Tawada wiped Kurosawa's cheek with a hollow look in her eyes as she said that. None of us could respond to her declaration. A vague feeling of anxiety was building up inside of me, thanks to that one specific line of reasoning. And I wanted to speak up, saying that the idea sounded delusional. But I didn't have enough solid evidence, so I couldn't dispute it. And there was also the fact that I still couldn't dispel my fear and insecurity about this so-called curse. When I turned round, I found Miss Sonozaki chuckling to herself, or giggling to just listening to our discussion. Sonozaki? Something so ridiculous can't possibly exist. Ridiculous? What is that supposed to mean? When she saw the look of protest in my eyes, she let out a heavy sigh. Sounds like you've all been reading too many weird mystery and occult novels. That may be true, and even I think it's ridiculous, but I stand my ground. Miss Sonozaki, just so you know, I find you more suspicious than any of us. Me? Oh, I have no idea why you're wandering around in a place like this wearing a kimono. And walking around carrying a katana is a clear violation of the Swords and Firearms Control Act. More importantly, the person named Mion Sonozaki died 20 years ago. I hit Miss Sonozaki with my trump card. However, her expression didn't change at all. So, is there something you want to say? Just who the hell are you? Who am I? Didn't I tell you earlier? I'm Mion Sonozaki, a former resident of Hinamizawa. Stop messing around. What would a dead person be doing wandering around in a place like... Suddenly, the sound of something slicing through the air struck my ear. When I looked down, I saw her sword right against my neck. I wouldn't say anything more if I were you. I could slice all of you down in a single blow. It would only take a moment. After staring at the look of horror on my face for a while, Miss Sonozaki returned the sword to its sheath. Only the weak could conceal a murder. Someone like that would be no match for me, so this has nothing to do with me. After saying that, she once again pulled out her scroll and spread it out. She seemed to lose all interest in our conversation and focused her attention exclusively on the scroll. Miss Sonozaki. Otobe tugged at my sleeve as if to say, please wait, and then ended the conversation. It's just as Arakawa says. There are a lot of reasons to be suspicious of me. When I first met her, I thought I couldn't trust her. When you first met? I first met me on close to here. I got lost. No matter where I wandered, I couldn't find my way. On top of that, any time I stopped walking, I felt like I could hear an extra footstep. You heard an extra footstep? Yeah. I've heard that myself several times. Near the suicide car and within the shrine grounds. Looking back at the source of that laughter, Miss Sonozaki was still staring at the scroll. What was she laughing about? Or did I just imagine her laughing? I wasn't sure. I'm not sure how much in this case she knows about Hinamizawa syndrome and what it does to people. Arakawa? Right, it's nothing. What happened next? Oh, the conversation trailed off a bit. Anyway. So, on top of being separated from everyone, I was hearing those footsteps. I was completely terrified. I felt totally hopeless and didn't know what to do. But then I noticed Mion standing nearby and she was nice enough to guide me here. That's why I'm convinced she isn't a bad person. It sounded like Otobe was trying to appeal specifically to me. Sorry, if you hear the sound of my voice shuffling around weirdly, it's because I'm moving to sit in a more comfortable position. However, it was Miyuki who calmly disputed his assertion. You can't judge people simply by their appearance. Miyuki? Indeed, Miss Sonozaki may not be a bad person, but not all crimes are connected with malicious or selfish intentions. I think there are situations where even a good person needs to kill someone. Hearing where this conversation was going left a bad taste in my mouth. The way she said that, it sounded like she'd killed someone herself. I don't know Miss Sonozaki's history, but I don't know your history either. Otobe, did you really drive here with your friends? Yes, that's right. I wonder if that's really true. Did you actually have friends to begin with? Otobe began trembling for some reason. Once again, he started acting that way as soon as we began discussing the friends who came here with him. Why are you asking that all of a sudden? However, rather than saying sorry for suspecting you, Miyuki wouldn't leave it at that. I don't believe you're telling the truth. That's all. What's that supposed to mean? Why would you accuse me like that? Why, you ask? I guess you could call it a bit of intuition. Miyuki stared at Otobe while he bit at his lip, but his eyes reminded me of a small animal being stalked by a hunter. Didn't you start out saying you were driving to an occult spot with your friends? Sorry, but I don't think you're the sort of person who would enjoy something like that. You're the kind of person who'd be terrified of that sort of thing, right? Sorry, bear with me a second. I'm going to check something on my phone super duper quickly. Plus, you may say that you're worried about your friends, but unlike Mr. Wada, you've made little effort to search for them. Why is that? Please, tell me. Sorry. Completely unhelpful what I was looking at. Well, Miyuki relentlessly pursued a psychological attack against Otobe. I put my phone down, it immediately buzzes. Sweet send me tweet. One by one, the arguments she made, all strangely convincing. As I listened to their exchange, something felt unfathomable about Miyuki's powers of observation. I'm worried about everyone. Please, don't suggest otherwise. Plus, my friends were the ones who decided to drive here. They told me Hinamizawa was a nice place to visit. Well then, how many people did you come here with? There were 3 others. 3 people, so 4 including you. By the way, were you the only male in the group? No, there was one other guy, and 2 girls. So some kind of double date? If that's the case, I suppose one of them was your girlfriend? Aren't you worried about her? Oh, you know, she could have been killed by the curse. Didn't I already tell you I'm worried? Besides, we're not together. We're just friends. What is this? The feeling of unease that had been accumulating in my chest for a while now was gradually shaping into suspicion. Was it directed at Otobe? Or maybe... Otobe, what is it that you're hiding? the very least, you're not an ordinary student, are you? I'm not hiding anything. I'm just a college student. What's so weird about me? Besides, what about you? Me? You don't look anything like a freelance writer. Is that so? Then what is it? What's strange about me? Please tell me. I want to understand, okay? Right, Ryunosuke? Miyuki looked straight at me as she said that. I couldn't say anything in response. Miyuki certainly didn't look like a freelance writer to me either. A writer like that certainly could exist, and Tobe was clearly stooping to retaliatory arguments. He was probably just saying the first thing that came to mind, but still. I still had no idea who she really was. So are you satisfied? Basic suspicion won't get us anywhere, you know? Right. Miyuki finally ceased her assault and turned to me with a smile. It was nice that our conversation got back on track, but who the hell is this girl? Anyway, a little mutual distrust is only natural in this situation, right? If we all stick together, nobody should be able to lay a hand on us. You're right about that. We'll be fine if we stay here until morning. There's nothing to be afraid of as long as the 5 of us stay together. But you mean the 6 of us? Huh? Even though one of us is already dead. Mr. Wada was still clinging to Kurosawa. Staring at the corpse started to give me a headache. What a bad feeling about it. We were in the middle of a village where demons and the dead dwelled, wandering and hunting down the living. Would this corpse rise up like a zombie and start feasting on human flesh? Is this the work of the curse? I'm sure it's the curse. Curse? What do you mean it's the curse? I was so frustrated that I shouted in a pathetic voice. When it comes to curses in Hinamizawa, the answer is always the curse of Oyashiro-sama. Is Oyashiro-sama's curse going to befall us for entering the ritual storehouse? Maybe the aliens who possess the people of Hinamizawa have awoken and are trying to control us? No, that can't be it. First off, isn't obsessing over the word curse like that an admission that you've given up on thinking critically? Ryunosuke, please, calm down. Miss Sonozaki, you're from this village, right? You know something, please, tell us. Miss Sonozaki was still reading the scroll. She closed her eyes and lightly rubbed them with both hands, and slowly opened them. Everyone carefully watched her every move, in complete silence. Then she rolled up the scroll and tied it with string like it had been originally. Now that you mention it, this does remind me of a tale I've heard about Oyashiro-sama. When someone is chosen as a sacrifice, they start hearing mysterious footsteps coming from behind. Then maybe you're Oyashiro-sama's messenger. Not a chance. Miss Sonozaki's eyes became viciously sharp. I couldn't help but choke on my breath after witnessing a level of rage I'd never experienced before. Naturally, there are many things that I know. However, the murder that happened here has nothing to do with me. And of course, it has nothing to do with Oyashiro-sama. Besides, this shoddy incident can't be the curse of Oyashiro-sama. Miss Tawada's spirit was being pushed to her limit. Her shoulders were shaking. Then Miss Sonozaki got up and slowly stepped beside her. Step aside. Huh? I said step aside. Right. Miss Tawada timidly moved away from Kurosawa's corpse while Miss Sonozaki looked down on it with cold eyes. Then she turned around and faced each of us, one after another. First, we need to ask, why did the culprit bring the corpse here? We were talking about that earlier. To threaten... No, you're not thinking here. Try thinking a little harder. Miss Sonozaki outright dismissed that theory. Then she relentlessly fixated her gaze straight ahead, towards Miss Tawada. Just how are we supposed to know that? Well, let me try to explain my reason. What if this corpse wasn't carried here? What if it was here the whole time? Huh? What is that supposed to mean? I mean exactly what I said. He wasn't brought here from outside, and of course he wasn't attacked outside. Then he was... We only ever saw him sleeping, wrapped in a blanket. In other words, Takumi Kurosawa may very well have been dead before we even arrived here. The air around us froze as soon as Miss Sonozaki presented her theory. She was right, we never actually saw him moving around. But if that was the case, it means Kurosawa was dead from the very start. But he was murdered? If so, the prime person who could have killed him is... No way! What is this? Are you seriously suggesting that Miss Tawada murdered him? Oh, hold on, Leon. If Miss Tawada really killed him, then why didn't she run away immediately? That sounds really weird. That's true. I nodded to confirm his observation. She had no reason to lie to us about being attacked and come back here. That's certainly true. Maybe that counter-argument got through to her. She held her hand to her mouth as she was considering it, but after a brief thought, she turned back towards Miss Tawada. Her shoulders were drooped and she had a look of terror on her face, like she was being stalked by a predator. I don't know why this girl came back here. Maybe she intended to run away, but some circumstances forced her to return here. What kind of circumstance? Perhaps the truth is, she made the mistake of seeing someone that caused her to blame the curse. Miss Tawada's face froze over. Could it be? She got it right on the mark. Someone? Who? Miss Sonozaki continued staring at her without acknowledging her question. Her gaze had enough power light behind it to stop an opponent in their tracks with just a mere glance. Tawada, I know you'd rather not show off your dead lover's body, but would it be alright if we gave it a brief examination? Only for a minute. We need to take his body out of the futons to look at it, alright? Told you, it's because I'm a curse, okay? Her voice quivered as she said that, doing her utmost to resist. However, her counter-argument lacked the power to stop. Indeed, that may be so. However, there's something I want to verify. Takumi Kurosawa was attacked outside as he told us. His body should still be soaked from the rain. At the very least, the hem of his pants should be caked in rain and mud. Do you mind if we verify that? Miss Tawada was in no position to refuse. Miss Sonozaki reached for the futon covering him. But before she could do anything, Miss Tawada grabbed the futon and pulled it over in a flash. Wait. Miyuki examined his feet before slowly turning her eyes towards Miss Tawada. His socks and the hem of his pants had not a single trace of mud, and no signs of wetness. They were as clean as freshly washed. Miss Tawada? Oh man, didn't realize we had a great detective here. Just a little longer and I could have regained my peaceful life. Miss Tawada faintly smiled with us. Felt something rather chilling from her smile. There was a self-loathing behind it, an effort to disguise the regret behind earlier mistakes. It's just as Miss Sonozaki says. Before all of you arrived here, I killed Takumi. Miss Sonozaki simply stared at Tawada without saying a word. I had no words to respond to her confession either. So when you told us the two of you were attacked by the shrine gate, that was a lie too? I'm sorry. By the time I went to the shrine gate, Takumi was already dead. Then she paused for explanation for a moment and thought. I really did love him. Because I loved him, I had to kill him. I'm not sure how many chapters are in each bad ending. Does that make any sense? If you loved him, why did you kill him? That was probably a rather imprudent question for a normal person. The problem is I can't remember. Like, I know. Hang on, right, let me do some basic math. 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, 8, 12, 14. This was end of chapter 14. Five. This is 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, 14. I'm not sure if we get bear with me, sorry, I'm gonna check. Okay. Okay. I've got the answer, which is that I kind of don't know, so we're going to keep going till 11 probably and see where we get to. Love and hate were two sides of the same coin. Thinking a little deeper, if the positives are replaced with the negatives, love could transform into hatred. And once in a while, that transition can fill you with violent urges, leading you to lash out at your partner. However, I thought that very few people actually experience that progression. No matter how intense your hatred, if your partner is someone truly special to you, it's important to accept them or reach a compromise. You should be able to do that. But for a person to give in to their urge to kill in spite of that, isn't that an outright denial of the affection they felt up until that point? I don't understand. Did your lover do something to betray you? Something unforgivable? No. Takumi wouldn't do something like that. It's just that I wanted to get rid of him. Get rid of him? It's been nearly 7 years since he and I started dating. So long, yet so short. We met during my first year of college. Miss Tawada raised her head and gazed off in the distance. That moment, an image emerged on the back of our eyelids of a little school building. Okay, I'm gonna, skip past this dialogue because we have read this. We're younger. And dude comes up to speak to her. Who's putting together a band and is flirting with her. Her heart was beating fast and they got together, they saw each other. He was playing the guitar, had fangirls, his eyes always on her. And they had this conversation about her ambitions. Came down and asked him about it. Saying that, he truly meant it. They had a delightful 4 years. She got a job, a company he'd never heard of, was doing solid business. Takumi couldn't find a job because he wanted to concentrate on his music. Friends started getting married. They lived together, into the help. Started living together. Then he started to change. Mr. Wada turned her gaze downwards. In the next moment, I heard a sound coming from the doorway. Miss Samazaki's complexion quickly changed as she rose to her feet. She grabbed the sword resting by her side and stood there without making a sound. Miss Samazaki? Quiet! Miss Samazaki held her breath and listened carefully. Someone is there, just outside the assembly room. That was the sound of another person moving around. I'm certain of it. Miki's face turned pale as she suddenly reached into her knapsack. Mr. Wada held her mouth shut, while Toby and I focused all the strength on our bodies on listening into the sounds coming from outside. What the hell is this? What on earth could it be? Shh! Miss Sonozaki turned back towards Toby, who was trembling and shouting, and held her finger to her mouth. You guys need to stay here. What about you? I have to do a little cleaning up. After that proclamation, she unsheathed the sword and walked towards the entrance. Wait, Miss Sonozaki? Huh? I started to chase after her, but something immediately stopped me. I heard the sound of someone fiddling with a gun. The thing Miyuki pulled out of her knapsack was a black handgun. Miyuki? I was so shocked my voice was quivering. We were all listening to Ms. Tawada's story until a moment ago, but the situation blew up in an instant. Miss Sonozaki, I'll go too. Very well, come on. The hell are you guys? I was so shocked I couldn't string together a sentence. Miss Sonozaki's katana was alarming enough, but Miyuki? Why did she have a gun? Ryunosuke, please stay here with the others. You know we can't do that. I rushed after her. I'll go with you. Otobe also scrambled to his feet, but it seemed pretty clear that he was following after us out of fear. I didn't have the courage to enter a battlefield where people are armed with katanas and guns any more than he does. But I'm even more afraid of staying here. Oh. Just as I was about to leave, I looked back to see Miss Tawada still sitting idly on the floor, gazing into Kurosawa's face. Alright, Tawada, I'll stay here. Staying here may cost you your life. Understood. Miss Sonozaki stared at her for a moment, then led her aside before walking out. How could she kill the man she loved? She spoke calmly as she recounted her story, but the pain and sorrows were still there. However, I still hadn't heard her reason for killing him. Will we survive long enough to hear the rest? I lamented leaving her behind while I made my way out of the area. The rain was still coming down. Actually, you know what? I have changed my mind, given that I have shit to do. I'm just going to get this ending done today. Also going to have a quick look. Volume 1. Okay, so it looks like Bad Ending 1 is relatively short. So I'm going to do 2 this week, and then I will do 1 and 3 next week, I think. Just because after this I have uni work I need to do, whereas next week, I think... watch them find directly into very nice line of deadlines, is on Thursday. So... got 2 final papers, 1 project, and 1 final exam to take, and I'm like, ugh. Yeah, I'm just going to do ending 2 today, and I'll do 1 and 3 next week to celebrate finishing the quarter off. The rain was still coming down. Whoops, back again. I couldn't see anything outside. The surrounding area was completely swallowed by the darkness. Stay still until your eyes adjust, and don't make a sound. After she said that, I held my breath and took a look around. I can't see anything. Why is the air so tense? Miyuki stood beside me with a gun in hand, focusing her ears on the darkness around us. Suddenly, I heard Otobe's footsteps. Sorry. It's fine, just be quiet. Ow. The next moment, I heard the voices of a few men and could see several flashlights waving all around us. They're here. Where? Get down. We ducked down to avoid the flashlights, but the voices were growing closer and more numerous. Miss Sonozaki tightly clenched the handle of her sword. No good. Looks like I'll have to clean up everything at once. I'm sorry. This'll save us time and effort. Actually, Otobe, can I ask you a favour? Miss Sonozaki held her hand to her mouth and whispered something to him. He was hanging his head down, perhaps regretting his blunder. Got it? Yes. That switch over there turns on all the lights in the shrine grounds. On my signal, flip that switch and run with all your strength. Which way? To the thicket over there, or anywhere really. These people are coming here to shoot us all. Everyone, just scatter and run away. Otobe swallowed his spit, then looked over at me. I nodded as hard as I could. I truly might lose my life right here. Despite that premonition, I felt strangely calm. Maybe this is actually a dream? Misamazaki's sword and Miyuki's gun felt so out of place that they seemed more like toys. Besides, why would Miyuki even have a gun in the first place? Ow. Sorry for the flashing, it hurts my eyes too. Otobe pressed a switch on the side of the entrance. There were lots of switches by the entrance, and Otobe wasn't sure which one to press, so he started flipping them at random. Electric lights scattered throughout the shrine grounds started lighting up, one by one. Sounds like exploding firecrackers echoed from all sides. So this isn't a dream after all. How many enemies are out there? Hurry, run! As soon as Miss Sonozaki shouted that, Otobe and I bolted out of the assembly hall. To the right? To the left? Which way should we go? Ryunosuke, this way. One straight ahead. I turned in the direction of Miyuki's voice, and ran straight through the rain. I heard enemy bullets strike the ground nearby as I ran past a telephone pole. Ryunosuke! Ow, stop flashing the screen. Miyuki pointed a handgun towards the darkness and fired several shots. The gun smoke wafted to the tip of my nose. Out of the way, it's dangerous. 2 more to the left. 1, 2, 3. A few more shots rang out. Through the smoke and the rain, I could see a man in a black suit. A bright red spurt of blood emerged from the tip of his shoulder, then he collapsed from Miyuki's bullet. Miyuki skillfully swapped in a new magazine. A man in black used that brief gap to point his gun in this direction. Someone came at Miyuki and me from the side and pulled us down to the ground. A bullet fired by the man in black struck the patch of mud where I was standing just a minute ago. Be careful. Thanks. We dodged that attack by the skin of our teeth. Miss Sonozaki was the one who tackled us. She charged towards the men in black with her katana in hand. 5 or 6 men had already fallen through the shrine grounds. The number still standing was probably around 3 or 4. Most of your comrades have already fallen. The rest of you don't value your lives. Come on out. Damn it, die! A man in black pointed his gun towards Miss Sonozaki and pulled the trigger. I heard the sound of the gun firing empty. She had a huge grin on her face as she slashed the man in black with her katana. I saw it slide through the pit of his stomach. The man's body folded over as he fell to his knees. Cold rain and black smoke bore down on the few men in black still standing. Damn you. Over here. Another man in black turned his model towards Miss Sonozaki, but Miyuki fired at him without hesitation. The next moment, right before our eyes, the handgun flew from the man's hand and danced in the air. The two of them quickly looked at one another and lightly smiled. It's like watching an action movie. Miss Sonozaki and Miyuki were fighting spectacularly right before my eyes. Even though they were fighting for their lives, every move they made was beautiful. Soon enough, the men in black recognized the gap in their capabilities, and they all fled at once. Miss Sonozaki flicked a thoroughly soaked sword, then wiped the blade clean with a tissue. Miyuki once again reloaded her still smoking gun as she slowly walked towards me. I had no choice but to watch them, dumbfounded. Just who the hell are you guys? Mion, Miss Sorimachi. Otobe's voice was trembling. The same most likely true for me. Miss Sonozaki took a quick glance towards Miyuki, but she quickly moved on and smiled towards Otobe. You're all right for now. That didn't answer any of my questions. Who were the people that attacked us? And who was Miyuki really? However, I could tell the current atmosphere wasn't right for seeking answers. Though I didn't feel like getting a chance to ask anytime soon. But for now, let's head back to the assembly hall. Let's turn off the lights around the shrine grounds. Understood. I immediately acknowledged her request like some Yakuza henchman. I don't think I've responded like that since elementary school. As soon as we returned to the assembly room, we discovered a cup of tea spilled by our feet. Miss Tawada? And right next to Miss Kurosawa's corpse, we found Miss Tawada laying on the ground.
Oh, poor woman. That's what I have to say.
I keep changing my mind about how long I want to stream tonight. I think I'm just going to finish this one off and then do the other two next week, just because I have reading that I need to do for this project, which I kind of just want to finish off tonight. So tired. We'll see. I don't know how many times I've regretted my actions since then. I would always come back to my senses after doing something I could never take back, and fall into intense self-loathing that drove me to want to destroy myself, and the cycle never ended. Let this be the last time. From now on, I'll repent and straighten things out. I said that over and over, so many times that I was disgusted. In the end, I'll always get triggered by the most truly insignificant things, and I'll do it anyway. When we started dating, I was supposed to pull her closer. She was a little indecisive and shy, but her gentle smile was so cute. Hiccups. I swore to myself I'd make her the happiest person in the world with my own two hands. Before I knew it, the overflowing talent I thought I was blessed with slowly dried up. When I noticed how much my rusty arms squeaked as I moved them, I understood. I lacked the strength to do it, and I even lacked the right to do it. But despite all that, she was always smiling and watching over me. No matter how useless I became, she always surrounded me in the same tenderness. No, that's a lie. The truth is, even she should realise it sooner or later, that even if we're together, that's not enough to make her happy. And I don't have the power to make it reality. So in that case, what should I do? Apologise to her? Abandon my aspirations up until this point and let her down, yet ask her to stay with me regardless? I can't do that. There's no way I could. If the truth of my situation were exposed, there's no way she could continue to love me, being the pathetic dog that I am. She fell in love with me because I was talented and brimming with confidence. So how could she ever be attracted to a weak, talentless man like me? Now that both of those things are gone, wouldn't it be impossible for the feelings in her heart to go on? I was afraid. I was afraid of her looking down on me, giving up on me, and abandoning me. That's why. Even though I'd resolved myself to make things easier for her and finally obtained this after shedding blood and tears, I couldn't show it to her. If I show her that, maybe she'll be delighted. At the very least, I won't be lazing about like I am right now, so that should make life a little easier. That way, the weight on her back can get a little lighter, and maybe she'll be able to smile again. But what about me? Is it possible for her to continue loving me? After all, I've already demonstrated myself as a completely mediocre guy. Can we really keep the relationship going like before? The beer tasted awful, but feeling drunk might help me take that step away. Anyway, even if I keep drinking like I have been these days, I still can't bring myself to gather the courage to show her. I'm terrified by the prospect of losing her love. Glad that it's called a coward's remorse, because that's exactly how I feel about this dude, that he is a coward. I have no heart for sympathy or forgiveness for him. Hey. Oops. Okay. Otabe gasped as soon as he realised. A thin red line of blood was dripping down from her mouth, making it painfully clear that she was already gone. It can't be. Miyuki ran closer and held her ear up to Miss Tawada's mouth. Then she frowned slightly while putting a hand on her neck and looking at her wristwatch, only to dishearteningly shake her head. We're too late. No good? What the? Don't touch anything. I reached out to pick up the fallen teacup, but Miyuki shouted at me to stop. Then she pulled a pouch out of her knapsack and opened the zipper. As I stood there confused, she took out some sort of paper and soaked it in the tea. There, right before our eyes, the paper in her hand began changing colour. Somehow, I recognised that the reaction of the paper illustrated what sort of chemicals were involved, but I couldn't imagine what chemicals it might indicate. Why did she have something like that in the first place? I thought so, but it's hard to believe she was carrying something like this around with her. Miki said with a bitter expression, then sat the teacup down. Good grief. There are more corpses in here? Don't think that this is your fault. This is what that girl chose to do. Misaki glanced at her corpse for a moment, then walked past us and started washing her mud-caked hands in the kitchen. Then, Miyuki pulled out a camera with a disheartened expression on her face and started photographing the state of the body. She didn't waste a moment. Her craftsmanship was as precise as an experienced police investigator. Wait, that's not what matters at the moment. Please explain what's going on. I want to understand. Unfortunately, we have no way of contacting emergency responders, so any attempt at first aid would be pointless. I was able to detect traces of poison in the teacup. What's worse, this is a powerful, fast-acting drug, so it's already too late to help her. Does that mean she committed suicide? We went out to fight those men dressed in black. She alone stayed here. She probably intended to die if her plan fell apart. Or maybe this was a plan from the moment she chose to come to this village with him. I didn't know what to say. We were all in serious danger until just a moment ago. We were on the brink of death. But it wasn't like that for Miss Tawada. She chose to die. I was able to hear her story to the end. Maybe I could have changed her mind. Maybe you could have done something. Or you could, relentlessly attack her and make her feel like shit. Maybe everything was already beyond my ability to help, dictated by some immutable fate. Could it be that she felt some responsibility that led her to carry out murder? If she did, I hadn't heard any, but what led her to murder? There must have been some motivation for it, but she never gave us an opportunity to hear it before dying herself. I knew the fact that she killed someone and the consequences of it, but is that really everything? Was taking her own life the only way to atone for it? Is human life really such a mechanical concept? Coarse feelings swelled around inside my chest, far beyond simple words like regret or sorrow. Suicide? Her? Otobi muttered to himself. Mr. Wada and Kurosawa looked like they were sleeping huddled together. It looked like a beautiful double suicide. Fine ending for an impossible love, but is there really beauty in something like that? A beautiful suicide? There's no such thing. How long are you going to aimlessly laze about? They're dead. You could stare at them the rest of your lives and they'll never wake up. Sonosaki's words brought me back to my senses. This is certainly true. There was nothing we could do for her at this point. And there was still another threat that placed our own lives in jeopardy. Anyway, get some sleep while you have the chance. They won't come back tonight. Probably. Okay. Miss Sonosaki sat down on the tatami with her back against a pillar and closed her eyes, sword still in hand. Watabe and I followed her lead and took a seat on the floor. Miyuki sat down beside me and started performing maintenance on a freshly used gun. Miyuki, Yonosuke, don't you think it'd be best to lie down now and get some sleep? Right. Miyuki, seriously, who the hell are you? I stole a quick glance at her face. I was convinced that even if I asked, she wouldn't tell me the truth, but I still wanted to know. Please, get some sleep. Don't worry about me. Good night, Yonosuke. Good night. Though she spoke in a discouraging voice, she gently smiled as she said it. In the end, I couldn't ask her anything, so I simply lay down on the tatami and closed my eyes. Arakawa, are you going to sleep? Yeah, I'm trying to get some sleep. In that case, shouldn't we turn out the lights? I don't mind either way. If you want them off, you take care of it yourself. No, I think it'd be best to leave the lights on. Miki remained seated as she said that to Otobe. It was less a suggestion, more an order. Just in case of an emergency. You close your eyes, it's pretty much the same. Right. You too, Otobe. Get some sleep. I'm going to bed too. Her voice was excessively gentle, like a mother addressing a child. Miyuki lay down right beside me. Good night. Now? Now it smelled like gunpowder and blood. If only she were just a freelance writer. If only she were a normal girl. Then we could have gone on a nice drive together this weekend. Good night. Otobe finally lay down. Three of us were laying straight in a line next to each other. The sound of rustling clothing awakened him. The sky was clear and sunny outside the window. The birds had just awoken began to sing. Otobe was still sleeping right in front of me. But when I turned around and looked in the other direction, nobody was there. Huh? I rose to my feet in a hurry. Miss Sonozaki was walking towards the doorway. Miss Sonozaki, you should all stay here and sleep. Oh, where are you going? Otobe must have heard my voice and started to wake up. Neil? Huh? Urasawa and Miss Tawara were still lying dead in front of the closet, like they were sleeping. It wasn't much different from last night, but... Where's Miyuki? I looked all over the assembly hall, but she was nowhere to be found. I had a feeling she wasn't in the bathroom. That girl left before the sun came up. She left? Where did she go? Where? I have no idea. Oh, that can't be true. You know something, don't you? I don't know. I've been focused on finishing my business. After saying that, she tried to leave the meeting room. Hold on. Where do you think you're going? To take care of a little business at home. At home? Isn't it obvious? I'm going to the main Sonozaki house. What are you planning to do at a place like that? Those men in black who came here last night. They were coming for you, weren't they? Let's set that conversation aside for now. Haven't you heard the saying, curiosity killed the cat? Miss Sonozaki said only that, then quickly stepped out of the meeting room. Oh, hold on. You can't leave me here with just that. Besides, it's not about curiosity. I'm already involved in this, so aren't we all in the same boat here? That goes for me too. Can't stand being left alone in a place like this. Then it can't be helped. I won't wait long, so prepare quickly. I jumped up and grabbed my luggage, then chased after Miss Sonozaki. When Otobe saw that, he came running over in a hurry. The rain had completely stopped. The fresh morning air surrounded my entire body. Seeing the shrine grate under the sun, it looked far less majestic than last night. It was just a small, old-fashioned shrine gate. Miss Sonozaki quickly descended the stone steps, then began walking down the country road. Which way are we heading? I wonder. It seemed like she wasn't interested in answering. Let's take a shortcut. After a while, Miss Sonozaki stopped at the end of a grove of trees like it was some sort of landmark, then advanced through the natural trail between them. Huh? You seriously going through a place like this? If you've got a problem, you guys can take the normal road. Understood. Please wait. Otobe followed closely behind Miss Sonozaki as she walked down the trail. Naturally, I started to follow a little afterwards. Hey, Otobe, wait up. Honestly, I was a bit anxious about being back of the line. I could picture the unreliable companions in front of me leaving me behind. Seriously? I've come this far, I won't get left behind now. I pumped my legs to shorten the distance between us. The rain or morning dew on the wet grass rubbed against the hem of my pants. A tree frog leaped from a lush green leaf. Oh, this is... Before long we arrived back on a country road. A vivid white cloud was floating just above the horizon, and a variety of vegetation was spread out before us. The road continued forward with old houses along both sides. It's a village? You talking in your sleep? It's the same village we could see from the shrine. This is Hinamizawa. Miss Sonozaki continued swiftly walking as she said that. Spider webs stretched across a decayed wooden house. The windows were broken and glass was scattered all around. Didn't really notice when I was looking at the mountains and the trees, but when I look at this house, it really does look like an abandoned village. Suddenly I remembered that I came here for work. I was in no mood to be taking pictures. After everything that happened here, I couldn't bring myself to think about journalism. Huh? Something wrong? Oh, no. Just thinking that, even though these houses are really old, there's one that doesn't look so old. Otobe stopped in his tracks, right in front of a huge white mansion. That's a humongous house. I feel like someone rich must have lived there. Miss Sonozaki stopped beside us and gently gazed at the mansion. It seemed like she completely tuned out our existence, like she was remembering something. Her eyes looked gentle, and she had a bit of a smile on her face, with a hint of sadness mixed in with it. What's wrong? You stopped all of a sudden. Pardon me for stopping. Let's go. She gazed at the mansion for a while with a nostalgic look in her eyes, But before long, she wrapped at the corner of her eye and started walking again. She said she was a resident of this village. If that's the truth, then maybe she has some precious memories of the person who lived in that house. Whatever. Honestly, I was interested to learn more, but this wasn't the time. I keep thinking about the irony of how much we would really actually genuinely love to know who lived here, how relevant it is to our personal story. I was walking at such a brisk pace that I had a hard enough time keeping up with her, let alone time to think idle thoughts. Eventually we arrived at a huge estate surrounded by a large fence. The size and construction were completely different from the other houses. It had a style befitting the three great families. In the front gate had several retro-style security cameras that looked like toys. Of course, they'd been neglected and left exposed to the rain for over 20 years, so there was no way they could still work. The entire house had a different sort of atmosphere to it. The high fences, security cameras, and the ornate double doors illustrated how strongly protected the Sonozaki family was. I focused my attention on my surroundings and froze, hiding behind the shadows of the door with the men in black from last night, waiting for us. In full sunlight, I could clearly make out the faces of the men. No matter how I looked at them, they were all obviously Yakuza. What? They're here too? What are you saying? This is all to be expected. Now we have no choice but to handle it. Miss Sonozaki grabbed a katana, and as if on cue, the men in black each stood up and grabbed their weapons. Hold on. Handle it? We're unarmed. Besides, I don't want to get involved in some gangster conflict. I understand that, but there's a hidden passage in this estate that leads out of the village. You guys will be able to escape through there. A gunshot rang out before she could finish speaking, but she already started running, in the direction it came from, straight ahead. It felt like she was trying to break through the front gate. Are you serious? Damn it! Arakawa? Watabe and I followed Miss Sonozaki's lead and started running. Don't let them escape. She's a monster. Monster? In the brief moment I was distracted by the voice of the man in black, a bullet flew by and hit the gate of the Sonozaki residence right behind my back. It seemed like they were trying to repel airbags. 2 more dry gunshots roared out. These guys are trying to kill us too? Of course. It's not so bad for them to think you're my allies. But why? Arakawa! Miss Sonozaki lifted her hand in front of my body and struck down on my head. I tumbled forward and fell to the ground. Immediately after that, a bullet pierced through her sleeve. There's no time for your grumbling. You want to survive? Hurry up and go. And then she pushed on my back to thrust me forward. The force of that thrust pushed my entire body towards the gate. I rolled on the ground a bit as I passed through the gate. Hurry, get inside. The hidden passage is beyond the well. Arakawa, this way. Damn it. Watabe had entered through the side gate and I ran in the direction he beckoned. I ran and ran like crazy. Meanwhile, Miss Sonozaki was fighting the men behind us with her katana, doing her best to protect us. She struck one on the top of the head with the back of the sword, then sliced up through the pit of his stomach. The men in black started collapsing, one after another. You too, Miss Sonozaki. Hurry! I'll catch up later. Once you cross the garden, you'll find a forest. Head there and keep running. I couldn't even spare a minute to look back at her. The enemies were constantly attacking, and she was fighting them off alone. Miss Sonozaki. Arakawa. We need to get moving. Got it. Watabe and I took off running at full speed. Eventually, we reached a desolate forest beyond the garden, just as she had said. The forest is part of the Sonozaki estate? I can't believe it. Sorry, shuffling around. Should we go in? Do you not want to go? Though I was still confused, I kept running. I couldn't see the men in black. I wonder if Miss Sonozaki is still fighting at the front gate of the estate. As I followed the trail through the forest, I came across a tunnel that looked like a coal mine or a shelter on the side of a steep slope. Surrounded by gentle slopes, this place was impossible to see from the outside. Could this be it? The secret passage? Right here? A sturdy door was installed here, likely to intimidate anyone who would come near. What's this? Something felt odd. When I studied the door in front of me, something felt out of place. As I quietly gazed at it, my breathing became rough and erratic. The door was slightly open. What's wrong? The door is open. But it just was abandoned. Wouldn't it make sense for it to be open? Hey! Watabe nonchalantly approached the door. I started to move the passageway too, but stopped in my tracks. A rotten, bloody stench struck my nose. You sure this is it? Secret passage she told us about? But if we don't go in, then we'll just get killed by the men in black out there, right? That's true, but you're right. Couldn't be helped. I took a moment to prepare myself and vigorously pulled the handle. Both the double doors came open, and a fishy odour burst out along the small insects. It was pitch black inside, so I couldn't see very well. Is this really it? Weren't you the one who said this was the only way? That's true, but after all, doesn't it look really dangerous? For now, let's head a little farther inside. We entered the wood-lined tunnel together. This may have been used as a shelter or storage facility during wartime. Mion said she'd catch up with us later, but do you think she's really coming? How would I know that? I'm sure she'll come. Don't worry. Okay. I was partially saying that to myself as well. I completely understood his unease because I felt the same way. I stumbled forward through the dark passageway with a hand on the wall. Mion, will she be alright on her own? I don't know, but even if we stayed behind with her, wouldn't we just get in her way? That's true, but it doesn't really feel like the right thing to do. We ran away and left her back there. I clicked my tongue. Toby's insecurity was quickly pushing the limits of my patience. If you got any more complaints, you're welcome to go back. When I raised my voice, it became hard to breathe. The oxygen levels might be lower in the secret passageway. No, that's not it. It's not that the air is thinner. My whole body felt heavy. Arakawa? Did you hear a sound just now? A sound? There shouldn't be anyone else here. But I'm sure I heard it. Watabe quickly fell to his knees as he said that. Watabe? Sorry, it's painful to stand. I can't do it. Hey, Watabe. What's going on? I couldn't see anything in the dark. What should I do? What can I do about this? That's right. If I use my camera's flash, I should be able to see my surroundings for at least a moment. And suddenly we're in fatal frame. I reached into my pocket to pull my camera, but my hand began to tremble and I couldn't get a grip on it. What is the meaning of this? My hands were trembling beyond my ability to control. Laura, it's too late for me. Watabe. I wanted to say his name, but I couldn't speak clearly. Somehow, I managed to push the shutter with my trembling hands. For a brief moment, the surrounding area was bathed in light. And in that moment, I saw insects clinging to the walls and a trail of white smoke running along the floor of the passageway. Is this smoke poison? By the time I noticed it, it was already too late. One of the men in black must have ran ahead here and filled the area with poison gas. That's right. I wish I'd been more cautious when I found the door open. I don't have any time left for regrets. The way I live may already be decided, but the way I die is not. That much is certainly true. I absolutely don't want to die quietly in a filthy, dark, smelly place where nobody will find me. I don't want to die. I'm sure nobody will ever even know that I died here. My family won't know where to look for me. Even if Atabe's family gets word of Mishra's search request, they'll never find us in here. I don't want to die. Not like this. I never wanted this. But my regrets are in vain, because my thoughts will cease soon enough. Damn it. Damn it! Anyway, let's load this one, and last time we did blanket, I thought, would you like some tea? Would you like some tea? We were all feeling cold, so drinking some tea might help us feel better. I walked over to the kitchen and casually turned the faucet on the sink. but no matter how I turned her, not even a single drop of water came out. Oh, right. This is a ghost town after all. I'd initially thought that I'd be able to get some water and light the stove, but after giving it a little more thought, it seemed natural that those facilities wouldn't work. With that in mind, I suppose it's fortunate that we even have electricity. The water won't come out. Yonosuke, if it's tea you want, I can get you some. Miyuki followed behind me with a kettle and a water bottle in hand. Naturally, she was completely ready to act. Just don't ask where she got the kettle from, huh? Oh, you're so prepared. You can do just about anything with a camping toolkit. Miyuki winked at me as she poured the bottle of water into the kettle. And then I twisted the knob on the stove. But even though I did, I couldn't hear the clicking ignition sound. When Miyuki saw that, she opened the compartment under the stove. The batteries had leaked out and the ignition switch was covered in rust. This is no good. Yeah, and if you think about it, even if we could use the batteries, what are the odds that there's still gas flowing through here? That's true. Ryunosuke, could you hold on a second? Sure. Miyuki stepped out of the kitchen after saying that, without waiting for my reply. God, gas hogs. Dangerous and a nightmare. I'm an electric hob in the flat that I live in now, and it is so much better in every conceivable way. Let me get my drink because my throat is very sore. With nothing else to do, I casually opened the door under the sink to see if anything was in there. The moment I did, a cockroach came crawling out. Then, that filthy creature made its way out the window. For a while, I stood there paralysed. Calm down. I heard laughter coming from behind me. It was Miyuki. Miyuki? Yonosuke, you're really amusing. Amusing? Can't believe how shocked you were by a cockroach. Well, it was surprising. Wait, do cockroaches not bother you, Miyuki? It's just a cockroach, right? They're just bugs. Bugs? Well, that's true, but are you the type who has no problem swatting them with a newspaper or something? There's no need to kill them. Cockroaches are just bugs. Nothing more, nothing less. A frank reply. Miyuki opened the sink door and peered inside as if to show off that she wasn't bluffing. I don't want to kill anything unless it's necessary. Insert bad joke about being a police person here. Even if a bug comes out, I won't kill it unless it's causing damage. Though I've been told that's a little odd, even when doing things outdoors. Is that so? That means you're a kind person. It's a little different from kindness. Killing should only be done when absolutely necessary. I don't want to see the look on someone's face the moment before death if I can help it. The look on someone's face? That's right. With eyes brimming with fear and despair. Hatred and malice emanating from the recesses of those eyes. Hatred? In the eyes of a cockroach? Miyuki spoke brightly, but despite that brightness I felt perplexed by the subtle nuance in her choice of words. When Miyuki said that, I wasn't sure if she was talking about cockroaches or human beings. You can barely even see the eyes on a cockroach. But in that case, that means Miyuki has seen the hateful eyes of someone on the brink of death? Sorry. Putting my fan on, I am the warm boy. And that means if she was looking into the eyes of a person while being killed, then Miyuki was the one who carried out that killing. You're right about that. I wouldn't want to see a bug with eyes full of hatred. Indeed. I smiled brightly and laughed to chase away my miserable thoughts. Miyuki casually responded and put down the portable stove that she was carrying. Oh, you're really prepared. Miyuki accepted my compliment with a smile, then attached the gas canister and rotated the switch. I held the flames of my lighter over it, and boom. A grandiose sound rang out as the flame was lit. Thank goodness. Now everyone will be able to have tea. Yeah. Oh, come to think of it. Miyuki furrowed her brows as she said that, then reached inside the cupboard. What's wrong? Tea leaves. I didn't bring any tea. Oh, that was careless of me. My mistake. Is that so? I guess you're not perfect after all, Miyuki. That stung a little. I just didn't think we'd have an opportunity to leisurely drink tea in a place like this, okay? Miyuki puffed her cheeks as she said that. Well, I suppose that line of reasoning has merits. With that in mind, I joined her in the search for tea. But suddenly my hand came to a halt. What happened? Well, think about it. Even if there were tea leaves here, they'd be over 20 years old, right? Apologies if you can hear the airplane from outside. Wouldn't they be terrible? Now that you mention it, the aroma and flavour both would be unappetizing. Well, the fact that the blockade's been lifted means there shouldn't be any residual contamination anymore, but any food we find here would be unpalatable. Indeed, I should have realised it sooner, but it would be difficult to make tea. Should we just make some hot water? Excuse me. I looked back at the source of that voice and found Miss Tawada timidly walking this way. In her hands, she held a 2-litre bottle of tea. If you'd like, we can take this and heat it up. Huh? Both wasn't killing me to eat a snack. Probably because I had neither breakfast nor lunch today. Huh? These are leftovers. Takumi was drinking directly from the bottle, so I thought it'd be no good, but that sort of thing is totally okay. You should have said so earlier. Right, Miyuki? Yeah, you've been a big help, Miss Tawada. Wonderful. Alright, then let's all have a drink together. Then Miyuki grabbed the bottle and poured it into the kettle on top of the portable stove. Wow, you really saved us. You could have died from drinking rotten tea. That's a bit overblown, Ryunosuke. Does tea even go bad in the first place? I don't know, but plants do slowly decay. Right. Although bad tea can give you an upset stomach, if someone were to die drinking tea, I'd assume it's because someone poisoned it. Wink. Miyuki flashed a smile, but the look in her eyes didn't look like it smiling at all. Come, Miyuki. That's not something to joke about. That's true. But doesn't that sort of thing seem possible? Well, yeah, but even so. I thought about what Miyuki said. Our enemy had already cut off our means of communication and our escape route. If they intended to kill us all, poison would be a quick and easy means. No. It's possible, but I don't want to doubt any of the people here. No way. I'm just kidding around. Things were that serious, I'd be in trouble too. Miyuki laughed as she pulled out the paper cup she brought with her. I can take it from here. Should I pour it into these cups? No thanks, I'll do it. Really? Miyuki arranged the paper cups while occasionally glancing at Miss Tawada and I. When I turned towards Miss Tawada, I noticed that she was still staring at Miyuki. You don't need a cup for me. I have a cup I used earlier. It's fine, Miss Tawada. There are plenty of paper cups, so there's no need to hold back. That's fine. I wasn't really trying to hold back. It seemed like they were trying to keep each other from pulling any stunts. What's with this atmosphere? Don't you know? Once you start to doubt something, everything looks suspicious. Ah, big sniff. Well, I'm going to head over there for now. I'm counting on you to take care of the rest, okay? Of course. Would you like to head back too, Miss Tawada? I can take care of this. No, I'll take care of it. Miss Soramachi, please, go on ahead. Miss Tawada responded in a surprisingly bold manner. Wait, I'm going to check something. Why did my phone do this thing to me? Okay, right. So, we're now on the route for ending 3, which is the other big one, and ending 1 is apparently a bit shorter. But let's keep going. Surprisingly bold manner. I suddenly turned back to look at Miss Tawada. It seemed clear that she didn't trust Miyuki. What on earth did Miyuki do to upset her? I'll handle it. It's fine, Miss Tawada. No, I'll bring the tea over as soon as it starts boiling. But Miyuki seemed equally perplexed by Miss Tawada's stubborn insistence. Which wasn't unreasonable. If someone completely shot me down like that, I'd feel terrible. Miss Aramachi, it's all right. Please, just go. But, Miss Tuara, your face is looking pale. It's all right, just go. Miss Tuara shouted to cut Miyuki off. Otobe, Miyuki and I could scarcely say anything. We all looked at her in astonishment. I'm sorry, but really I'm okay. I'll take care of this. So please, just head over there and relax, everyone. Miss Tuara suddenly pushed herself to the front of the stove. When I thought about why she was going over there, an ominous thought suddenly came to mind. Maybe she doesn't want Miyuki touching the tea? She mentioned poison when she was joking around earlier. No way. Is Miss Tuara truly worried it might get poisoned? And she's keeping an eye on the kettle to make sure? Ridiculous. Miyuki would never do something like that. Right then, how about both of you go? I'll make the tea. You too, Arakawa. Please, just go. I intended to step between the two of them and say something to calm things down, but she pushed me away as well. In other words, she can't trust anyone but herself? Can't be helped. For the time being, I urged Miyuki to head back to the room with me. Miyuki and I sat down near Otobe, waiting for the tea to warm up. I couldn't think of anything to say. Otobe probably felt the same way. He kept looking down the entire time, trying to avoid making eye contact with any of us. And Miyuki was staring up at the walls and ceiling, looking bored. Occasionally she glanced in Miss Tuara's direction and let out a gentle sigh. Eventually, Miss Tuara came over carrying cups full of tea. Sorry to keep you waiting. As she said that, she placed a cup in front of each of us. Sorry, I didn't pour them very evenly. That's all right. I'll take the one with the least. It's all right. I'll take the small one for myself. I reached for the cup in front of her, but she gave me a vague smile as she grabbed it, and in doing so prevented me from picking it up. Thanks for the tea. Otobe timidly reached for his cups. Everyone's movements felt somewhat stiff, or something like that. I took a deep breath to reinvigorate myself, and intentionally spoke in a booming voice. All right then, it feels a little wrong to say that I got most, but thank you for the tea. Of course, it was an empty show of bravado. I just wanted to do something to relieve the tense atmosphere, even minutely. I drank a sip of the warm tea, then suddenly took a breath. I could feel the warm tea, gross, suddenly dribbling down my throat and into my stomach. Once again, I realised how cold my body was. I find whenever I'm really cold and I take a warm drink, I get almost like heartburn. I guess it's just the like temperature change. I never notice it with cold drinks when I'm warm, probably because I like tend to chug cold drinks, whereas you don't necessarily chug hot drinks. My god, words. Yeah, fun fact for you all. We were out in all that rain. It's only natural. We're trapped in this village and staying up to avoid being demoned away. It's natural for my heart to have frozen over from all the anxiety and tension. This warm tea should unravel that tension. As I finished drinking the tea, I took a deep breath. Looking beside me, Miyuki was sitting there, motionless. You haven't drank any of yours yet, Miyuki? Right. Somehow I'm feeling reluctant to do so. Miyuki stared at the paper cup in front of her. She was that suspicious of Miss Tuara. There was no other reason for her to hesitate like this. I understand how you feel, but maybe drinking it will help you feel better? It's true, tea does make you feel better. After finishing his tea, Otobe leaned his back against the wall and closed his eyes. Hopefully I didn't cut out there. And shortly thereafter, he fell asleep with a comfortable look on his face. Looks around shiftily. Alright then, maybe I should get some rest. I lowered myself down to the tatami mat and used my arm as a pillow. On the verge of closing my eyes, I took a glance over at Miss Tuara. She continued staring at us, with a paper cup still in hand. The tea in her cup hasn't gone down at all. I tried to say something to her, but an intense lethargy suddenly overwhelmed me, forcing my eyes closed. Spooky. God, that transition was like very abrupt. I feel like Miss Tuara is actually one of, in my mind, the most interesting characters in this chapter, because she's She's one of the more complex characters, in my opinion. And she's very good. I like her. So- Oh, I see. I mean, for some reason I thought this was the bad ending. No, this, and this are the bad endings, and then 5B2 and 7B are. Oh no, 7A maybe? Who knows? Anyway. Continue. I'm not going to read the tips because I know I've already read them. I was having a dream. The sun was beginning to set, and I decided to lace my entire afternoon away with a beer in hand. Several empty bags of chips and magazines were scattered across the tatami floor. A blank word processor was still open on the laptop screen. Okay. There hasn't been a single work request in the past month. Every story I pursued has been flat out rejected. It was a rotten situation. An oppressive heat and the cries of the large brown cicadas came pouring in through the open window. Meanwhile, the ear-splitting ringing of the telephone ripped me from my slumber and pulled me back to reality. Should I answer? What should I do? I wet my tongue with a swig of the beer in hand. It was nasty and lukewarm. I reluctantly reached for the receiver, thinking it might be a work request, and was greeted by the hoarse voice of an old woman. Is this Ryunosuke? I'm dreaming about that summer. That was late in the summer of 2003. I'm the mother of your father. Huh? That unexpected self-introduction left me at a loss for words. My father's mother? In other words, I'm your grandmother. We were surprised because we didn't know he had children. I'm surprised too. So what is it? I never even knew my father, and now you want something from me? I'm not asking for anything. It's a long story, but your father died a long time ago. He's dead? 8 years ago, he had an accident on a fishing boat, and after sorting through his belongings, we found a diary and some tape recordings he made at work. He mentioned you in his writings. It came so suddenly, I struggled to understand it, but it did add up. Since I had plenty of free time at the moment, I hopped on the train that same day and headed to Osaka, where my grandparents lived. The elderly couple lived in an apartment in Osaka Prefecture. Based on my father's diary and the stories my grandparents told me, my father was a journalist working for a weekly photo magazine in Tokyo. However, he suffered a mental breakdown after a certain scoop, and after numerous transfers, ultimately retired from his position as a reporter. He was acting strange at the time and returned to Osaka where his parents lived in order to escape from everything. He also cut off all communication with the woman he was dating at the time, my mother. He didn't do much work after returning to Osaka. He dug into his savings while scraping by on a day-to-day basis. And one day, 8 years ago, he drowned in an accident where his fishing boat capsized. My father's life came to an end before he was able to recover from the hardships he experienced in Tokyo. So we had no inheritance to leave you. Sorry. That's fine. I wasn't expecting anything to begin with. I've never met any of my father's relatives, so they were essentially strangers to me. I didn't have any strong feelings when I met them. My grandfather's eyes looked somewhat similar to mine, but that was it. And based on the dispassionate way they looked at me, they probably felt the same about me. They probably would have felt more empathetic if I was a child, but I was already a fully grown adult. That was the feeling I got from their expressions. Anyway, back in Tokyo, he was investigating a village called Hinamizawa. Hinamizawa? The site of the Great Hinamizawa disaster? No, obviously. Yeah, we found some tape recordings of his interviews with the survivors from the village. We had a detective agency do some research to find you, and the detective mentioned you were a reporter in Tokyo, so we thought it might be useful to you. Take a look. As she said that, my grandmother handed me 2 cassette tapes. The labels were faded and peeling off, but I could just barely read the titles. November 24th, 1983, Shion Sonosaki, and November 28th, 1983. Keiichi Maebara. According to my grandfather, these were recordings of interviews with survivors of the Great Hinamizawa disaster of 1983. The tapes were in poor condition and likely to break at any time, but I decided to take them home anyway, just in case they sparked a story of some sort. The fact that these belonged to my father meant little to me. On the way back, I stopped by a second-hand shop and bought a cassette player they were about to throw away, then returned to my tiny apartment. I'd heard various rumours and theories about the Great Hinamizawa disaster in the past, which means I might be able to write an occult article based on those tapes and sell it somewhere. With high expectations, I slipped the Keiichi Maebara tape onto the cassette player and pressed the play button. Unfortunately, no matter which way I rotated this tape, I couldn't hear anything but harsh static and faint, unintelligible sounds. I expected better results from something produced with such expensive equipment. What's more, I didn't even get a return on my own investment here. Well, it is over 20 years old after all. Feeling slightly disappointed, I decided I might as well grab the Shion Sonozaki tape and try playing it. Oh? Despite my low expectations, I suddenly heard a voice breaking through the silence. Judging by the tone and intonation, she was female, likely a young girl. Perhaps she's the Shion Sonozaki from the label on the tape. In the end, I was exactly right. Oyashiro-sama really does exist, and the curse is real. And that curse is what killed everyone. Oyashiro-sama? And the curse? There was a haggard tone in her voice as she muttered that. I quickly stopped the tape and carefully rewound it, taking care not to break it. Then I put on my headphones and started listening from the beginning. In the end, what she said was exactly right. Oyashiro-sama really does exist, and the curse is real. And that curse is what killed everyone. When that girl blew up the school, I thought she committed the crime out of insanity and cursed her for killing my sister. But the very next day, the gas disaster took everyone in Hinamizawa. The only survivor was Keiichi, who was being questioned by the police at the time, just like me. Keiichi? I was confused for a moment, not knowing who that was, but then I looked at the label on the other tape in my hands. This makes no sense. I made the decision very early on when I was streaming this not to read out the honorifics except for Oyashiro-sama, because I suppose it would probably be translated to either Lord or Lady Oyashiro, but I feel like even though it's often referred to with male pronouns, like Hanyu refers to herself with female pronouns, and also is also like the emblem of it, and so is Rika. So I'll be honest, that thought came to me after I started accidentally saying Oyashiro-sama rather hiccup than Lord or Lady Oyashiro. And so now I'm just into it, but sometimes things like the Kei-chan, Keiichi, I'll be honest, I was a teenage weeb, and so I don't like reading stuff that has honorifics in it. Is like whatever, it makes sense, it's, you know, there's a lot of these things, like a lot of the honorifics have meaning which is just impossible to convey in English. Like, I don't know, like, Tawara-san, I would refer to as Ms. Tawara, but sometimes you just sort of have to make the decision. Is it Keiichi? Is it Mr. Maebara? Is it Mr. Keiichi? Something like that. Ms. Sonozaki, that sort of thing. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, anyway, the Kei-chan, Keiichi distinction makes no sense unless I read out the honorifics, so I apologise if you're listening to this and not, like, watching and were very confused there. I hope you enjoyed my rambling aside about honorifics and reading them versus not reading them. I don't know, there's just something about, like, referring to Mion as Mion-chan that just, like, Mi-chan, it just feels strange to me to say it. For me, not strange to be said, but strange specifically for me to say and read it out loud, even though reading it, like, in-game is whatever. Anyway, then I looked at the label on the other tape in my hand, which is probably referring to the Keiichi Maebara from this tape. Unfortunately, I had no way to confirm this information. Even so, I felt an eerie sensation as I listened to the tape. The idea that the Great Hinamizawa disaster was caused by the curse of Oyashiro-sama is one of the least credible theories at the moment. But even at the time this interview was conducted, they likely doubted it. After all, even though modern Japanese people are quick to fear paranormal phenomena, they tend not to truly believe in it. They'd say that's impossible or ridiculous any time it came up in idle chatter. This reminds me of like a philosophical concept that I find really interesting about both like what we would consider religious belief and superstition, even though they're basically two sides of the same coin, is the idea that very often one has an almost like better safe than sorry attitude towards it. The materialistic values of the Western world have penetrated into our society, turning our perception of spiritual or speculative phenomena upside down. But despite insisting that everything can be explained through science, they still find themselves fascinated with supernatural phenomena, and they can't help but fear they might be cursed for doing so. So while they maintain the superficial posture of disbelief, they're still terrified to face that horror head-on. They merely turn their eyes from its existence. But on the other hand, they have a desire to understand the things they fear, and they're willing to get dangerously close to do so. I think that's the true nature of people drawn to the occult. Well, was the gas disaster actually caused by Oyashiro-sama's curse? I think that's too heavy-handed an explanation. I heard an arrogant voice speak up shortly after the girl finished speaking. That was the first time I'd heard my father's voice. It lacked the depth and astringency I would have expected, but then I remembered that this was when my father was still young and was convinced. To tell the truth, I'm sceptical of the occult. I haven't witnessed it with my own eyes, and the second-hand information sounds illegitimate. That's why I believe there must be some artificial element to this disaster. I thought it would be appropriate to ask you about that. Wow, that sounds a lot like how I was until recently. I didn't believe in curses or anything like that. Until the disaster occurred. Right, sis? Huh? Just then, it sounded like my father's voice cut out after gasping. And then, believe or don't believe, that's your choice. But if you keep stubbornly believing in your own ridiculous preconceptions, maybe you'll be cursed too. Well, if you can still run that mouth of yours even after you see it for yourself, you really are something. Huh? What happened? My father's tone and demeanour completely changed. He groaned in astonishment, his fear audible through the static of the old tape. What could have happened? Or rather, what on earth did he see? Tomitake died clawing his throat out. Mr. Kano burned to death in the mountains. Sis, Rika and Satoko were blown to pieces. So how about you? What sort of death can you hope for? It's quite an elaborate joke. Just what are you getting at? From now on, watch out for footsteps. You come to a sudden stop while walking down the road and you hear one extra footstep. That's Oyashiro-sama. It means you're being followed, being cursed. You might be able to hear it even now. Right here. Uh-huh. See? You really heard it. And it's been decided. Tomitake committed suicide, Mr. Kano is immolated, Sis and the others died in the explosion, and you are going to drown to death. Subpart laughter here. I jumped back immediately and threw the headphones aside without even thinking. What was that just now? And even more than that, the girl on the tape clearly said that he would drown to death. And my father really did drown to death, just as this prophecy foretold. Huh? I heard a footstep coming from behind. Wait, please, just wait a minute. What is Oyashiro-sama doing here? Ow. That moment, the tatami floor transformed into a dark void. If I fell into it, I'd be swallowed whole. Then my consciousness quickly faded. My dream ended there, and I awakened. Huh? I slowly opened my eyes. The ceiling of an unfamiliar room was spread out before me. Where am I? I got up and took a look around. It was a spacious, tatami-lined room. I was dreaming. Where am I? You feeling all right? An unfamiliar man was kneeling by my side. Huh? What's wrong? Who are you? Who am I? First off, who are you? My name is Arakawa. I'm a freelance writer. I struggled to piece together my current situation. Based on his outfit, he looked like a plainclothes officer, probably a detective following up on a tail-based report. I assume you've already heard about the suicide party in the car? Huh? Oh, you're a police officer, right? Yes, that's true, but I wasn't thinking clearly at all. It felt like my mind was in a haze. How can I explain this? I took a look around. It was still dark outside the window. How long was I asleep for? There was nobody else in the room aside from this officer and myself. To check something. Huh? Nobody? What's wrong? What about the others? Others? Miyuki. I mean, weren't there 2 women and a man in this room with me? No. You were the only one here when I arrived. Huh? What's going on? We were all here drinking the tea Miss Tawada brought us. Then after feeling relieved, we started getting tired and fell asleep. That much made sense. The question was, what came after? Wondering how long I'd slept for, I glanced at my watch. Uh-huh? The hands pointed to 11 o'clock. That can't be. When I arrived in Hinamizawa in Miyuki's car, it must have been around 10 or 11 p.m., which means... today is the 22nd of June, right? It's actually the 15th, but close enough. Yeah, well, the policeman gave me a dubious look. For now, I asked him to verify if the events that transpired before I fell asleep were just a dream. But that appears not to be the case. If we assume that, then what does this mean? When did you arrive here? Just a moment ago? Right. There were actually 4 people drinking tea in here. The paper cups that should have been sitting in front of us were all tidied up. Is something wrong? No, there were no indications of other people. Where did everyone go? Even though I looked around, it appeared that I was the only one here. So... By the way, Arakawa, you mentioned something about a suicide party? Oh, yes. Would you show me where? As I sat there absent-mindedly, the policeman grabbed my hand and asked that in a monotone voice. I gave him a vague answer, but for some reason, alarm bells were going off inside my head. It feels like there's a far more serious incident going on than a group suicide. Wink. No, it's not just a feeling. Everyone has gone aside from myself. Could this be another disappearing incident? Officer, The policeman forcibly lifted me by the arm, seeming to ignore what I was trying to say. And then... Please, show me the way. Where is the suicide camp? Well, more importantly, I think that there are more important things going on right here at the moment. I'll listen to what you have to say while we head to the car. The policeman tried to avoid making eye contact as he started walking off. There's something weird about this guy. The alarm bells were ringing even louder inside my head. What's the matter? Come this way, Arakawa. I left the assembly hall, pretty much dragged away by the police officer. The rain was still coming down hard. 3 more police officers were waiting just outside the assembly hall. Then, as I descended the stone steps, it felt like I was surrounded by them. A black car was parked at the base of the stone steps. Wait a minute. Why is it a black car? Even if these are plainclothes detectives, shouldn't they have come in a patrol car? The policeman I met earlier pushed me into the back seat and sat down next to me. This man allegedly witnessed a group suicide. Oh? Yes, well, what was the model of the car? How many people were on board? How many people? You saw corpses, didn't you? I could hear a hint of curiosity in the police officer's voice. I shot a look of displeasure at the officer sitting next to me. I didn't get a very good look. Huh. The policeman sounded disappointed as he said that. With no further questions, the car began lurching forward. Even though the ban was recently lifted, there aren't any people living in the area. If you hadn't found that suicide party's car, it would have gone a long time before being discovered. Bet we'll find a bone or two if we dig around the area. I don't want to come to a village like this ever again. The officer holding the steering wheel spoke in a tone that made it sound like we were heading off on a sightseeing trip. The high beams lit the way as we travelled down the pitch-black road. No matter where I looked, I couldn't see anything but trees. The officer sitting beside me pulled out a cigarette and lit it with his lighter. The surrounding area was illuminated for a moment. Huh? In that moment, I noticed something red glittering between the seat and the backrest. A ruby earring? I'm certain that Miyuki was wearing ruby earrings. Which means that was one of Miyuki's earrings? However, the light disappeared too quickly for me to make certain, and the car was once again enveloped in darkness. Oh, right. Do you mind if I smoke? His unpleasant tone made it hard to say anything back. In my current situation, the stench of cigarette smoke was no consequence. The question is, what is Miyuki's earring doing in a place like this? There's no way her earring could have fallen off in here. In which case, maybe it's just a coincidence? Something wrong, Arakawa? Huh? No. As I sat beside the smoking police officer, I held my breath and started thinking. What on earth happened to Miyuki? And speaking of that, I was worried about Ms. Tawada and Otobe too. No way. Are they all demoned away? Maybe these guys are the ones responsible? Those disturbing ideas dominated my thought process. The warning bells inside my head were ringing even louder. I wanted to get out of here. I wanted to get out of this car and run away as soon as possible. Anyway, you mentioned earlier that there was some other awful thing going on. What was that? Nothing. Don't hold back. Please, tell me. Well, was there really nobody else in the assembly hall? No, nobody. The policeman stared vacantly at me. There was nobody else there. Just you. There shouldn't be anyone in this abandoned village in the first place. Maybe you saw a ghost? The officer completely rejected my assertion. Eventually we passed a fork in the road and started heading downhill. Hold on, this isn't the right way. It's alright, this is the way. No, the suicide car isn't this way. It was back to the left. A creep suicide? Do you really want to see something like that? The officer said in a menacingly low voice. A chill crawled up my spine. These people, they're not police officers, shock horror. Doubt sprung up inside of me. So where are we headed? I tried my best to stay calm as I asked that. My heart was pounding so hard it was about to leap out of my chest at any moment. That's not something you need to know. The car climbed the mountain road, then descended. We passed by the swamp where the gas originated from, then drove along the river. This isn't the way to Okunomiya, is it? You don't need to know where you're going. The car pressed on in the drizzling rain, weaving through the darkness. Several months later, summer had ended, autumn had ended, and the new year was about to begin. The editorial department of the Weekly Seven was bustling, like always. Phones were ringing, people were talking, and books and manuscripts were piling up on everyone's desks. Then let's use that for the Ghost Special Edition. The faces of the young editorial staff members lit up once editor Kano gave the go-ahead. Among the young editorial staff, Arakawa was absent. Kano quickly finished up the paragraph, then grabbed a cigarette and sat down on the sofa for a much-needed break. Was smoking inside allowed in the early 2000s? Maybe it wasn't Japan, I can't remember. Oh no, this would have still been the 80s, never mind. If Arakawa were here, it would have been more interesting. He muttered in a defeated tone. Ryunosuke Arakawa had gone missing after leaving to investigate Hinamizawa a few months ago. There was a good chance he was caught up in some sort of incident. Though the police have been searching desperately, they still haven't found any clues. Rumours suggested that the Sonozaki group put pressure on the police over the course of the investigation. Naturally, the Sonozaki group denied any involvement in the incident, and there was no evidence to substantiate those rumours. People on the internet have been whispering that this is the work of Oyashiro-sama's curse. Word got out that Arakawa's father— I forgot, this would be the early 2000s, I'm a fool. Arakawa's father had also investigated Hinamizawa in the past, so the curse claimed the lives of 2 generations of family. I wonder if it really is a curse killing people. I'm sure he would think so. Kano smiled bitterly, then changed the channel on the TV. On to our next story. Earlier today, the skeletal remains of a body were discovered near the mouth of the Kisugawa River in Mie Prefecture. Yeah. The next moment, Arakawa's face was being displayed on the TV screen. Kano was so shocked he dropped his cigarette. Belongings discovered in the vicinity allowed authorities to identify the man as Ryunosuke Arakawa. The police are doing their utmost to learn more about this incident. Arakawa? Kano rushed back to his desk and spread out a map. In addition to Mie Prefecture, the Kisugawa River also ran through Aichi and Gifu. Following the river upstream led to Hinamizawa village. What the hell is going on? Editor, shall I add an article to this guy about this guy to the Ghost Special Edition? A young editor watching the TV called out to Kano. Yes, please do. His voice sounded surprisingly curious, which was to be expected since this man wasn't acquainted with Arakawa. As Kano pondered that, he turned back towards the TV. The curse of Hinamizawa village came to the lives of father and son. Suddenly, titles like that ran through the back of Kano's mind. And what happened to Inosuke Arakawa's travel companion, Miyuki Soramachi? And the people he met there, Akira Otobe, Yai Tawara, Takumi Kurosawa, and Mion Sonozaki? Their fate was completely in the dark. The truth of this incident remains a mystery. The truth behind all these mysteries was swallowed up by the village where the man-eating demons dwelled. It's a really good ending. I like that. Right. I am fading fast, but we are going to do police files. End it for the night. At some point, I will edit these all together into a jumbo episode. I should only be like 3.5 hours long, probably. And I'll be able to cut a fair chunk of it. Right. We want to click on the police case files. These ones, I think. Summer 2006. I've heard all the rumours, but this really is a gorgeous view. Standing at the top of the hill, I stretched my arms out wide, took a deep breath to fill my lungs with the fresh air. A serene countryside landscape was laid out right before my eyes, and the distinctive thatched roof houses were beautifully peppered throughout the landscape. It was a far more spectacular sight than I expected, and I couldn't help but let out a sigh. Could have started out here together, Dad. You didn't have to go and say it'd be more efficient if we split up. As I said that, I looked off in the direction I expected my father to be. Of course, there was no way I could see him from here, but I could just picture him furrowing his brow as he sifted through case files and immediately burst out laughing. My father was currently heading off to survey the swamp alleged to be the source of the volcanic gas. He called it the Onigafuchi swamp. Nowadays, the land is buried in concrete. It's a huge vacant lot in the middle of the forest. Now then, first off, I should stick to standard procedure and start taking pictures. So I waved goodbye to the breathtaking scenery and went back the way I came. Luscious Huinui was growing in the grassy fields along the way. The bright sunshine was brilliantly reflected in the raindrops that had fallen last night. When I stepped onto the soft grass, my feet sank in up to my ankles and water began pouring in. I could see a pitch-black, filthy stone lantern in a clearing up ahead. In the olden days, there were ton of plants spread through the lawns and gardens, with clusters of cedar trees standing against the backdrop of pines in the forest. But now the area was covered in tall weeds. It wasn't all that different from the flatlands deep in the mountains. I continued taking pictures as I made my way to the main shrine and stopped in front of the ritual storehouse. The latch on the door was broken and I caught a glimpse of the dark interior through the gap between the doors. According to the materials I read beforehand, a variety of unsavoury tools and instruments were stored within. I wonder if it's alright to be taking pictures here. Maybe I'll get punished for it. Not worth it. After briefly getting lost in thought, I decided to leave the area for now. I'd already been in there once to take a glimpse, but even I couldn't bring myself to go in again all on my own. At any rate, these buildings have suffered significant decay since all the people left the area. That's natural for a shrine without any residents. I let out a sigh as I stared at the main hall. The paint was bare from weather exposure, and the decorative brackets were covered in rust. The wooden parts were, needless to say, even worse. Now then, where should I go next? I took a seat under the shrine grate, then pulled a map of the village out of my breast pocket and spread it out before me. It was a computer-generated map I was able to design based on the surveying conducted by my father and his fellow detectives, and the end result was pretty impressive. When my technologically inept father first saw it, he said, "You chose the wrong career. You'd make a lot more money working for a design company." Still, even if he'd said that sort of thing earlier on, it wouldn't have changed my mind. Indeed, it might be a bit overblown to say, but I do believe that I was born to be a detective, and I came to this village in order to succeed my father's will. I'm at the Fude Shrine now, so I looked up at the sun high in the sky to confirm the appropriate direction, and then I turned my gaze down towards the map spread out in front of me and pulled a pen out of my breast pocket. so we know that Miyuki has been here at least once, if not more. Which is not surprising. She definitely knew her way around. Epilogue. The alarm rang out just as I checked my watch. It was time to meet my father. I descended the stone steps of the Furude Shrine, straddled the folding bike parked there, and headed towards the former Sonozaki main building. When I arrived at the meeting place, my father was resting after finishing his investigation. Then we exchanged materials to ensure we didn't miss anything in our respective investigations. Yeah, that should be good for now. After this, we'll report our findings at Mr. Oishi's grave before returning to Tokyo. He was a friend of my father from Hinamizawa. I'm sure he'll be pleased. Huh? You're able to connect with that cell phone? Just a moment ago, I noticed the man my father referred to as Captain talking on his phone. I waited until he finished his call to ask about it. For a moment he made a face that said, "What are you talking about?" but quickly understood what I meant and responded yes. I'm certain there's no relay anywhere near this village, or do radio waves make it all the way out here? That's not it. This is a satellite phone. The captain pulled the phone from his breast pocket and handed it to me as he said that. It looked like an ordinary cell phone at first glance, but I didn't recognise the design, and the manufacturer was someone I'd never heard of. It communicates via satellite, so it can connect even with the open sea. The price is rather high though, so it's no good for normal people to use unless you do a lot of overseas travel. Really? Then I wish I'd signed up for one and brought it with me. If I had, it would have solved a lot of our problems last night. I could have avoided getting civilians involved in a dangerous situation, and saved myself from all that cold sweat. My mistake. It's because of that time that a life that didn't need to die was saved, and a future that would have only led to despair at the end of suffering was cleared. It was nice to think of the end result or something like that. Right, I'm sorry. Could I borrow it for a minute? It's fine, but what are you going to do with it? I just remembered that my boss wanted me to report in about a case as soon as possible. I planned to call after I got back to the hotel, but I've been away for 2 days now. Is that so? Then please, go right ahead. Since it was for official purposes, the captain had no reason to refuse, so he agreed to let me use it. I said, "Excuse me for a moment," then walked a short distance away and called my director. Unfortunately, the director was far more upset than I expected. I bowed my head, not that he could see it, and explained the situation, but then she said, "Send the data and report immediately," and hung up on me. Well, this is bad. Couldn't help but sigh. I remembered using the data I created for tomorrow's meeting materials until the morning of 2 days ago. I worked all night to finish it, so all I had to do was just send it over. However, I caught wind that Rinosuke and Mr. Arakawa was heading to Hinamizawa to investigate, and I was so focused on getting ready to depart that I forgot all about it. Fortunately, I brought a PDA to document all the information, but now it can't be helped. It's a pain, but I guess I should head back to Okonomiya for now. When I told my father I was heading back early, the captain handed me the satellite phone I just returned to him and told me a convenient alternative. You connect it to a terminal that can also do data transmission. Instead of travelling to Okonomiya, why not send it from here? You don't mind? Good luck. I took him up on his kindness once again, then pulled my PDA and a communication cable out of my knapsack. The early 2000s. Although I had a modem and adapter cable designed for cell phones, but maybe they'll be compatible with this satellite phone? There we go. I prayed as I lined the cable up with the socket on the satellite phone, then heard the click of a successful connection. Then I booted up my PDA, connected the other end of the cable, and launched the mail application. Yep, looks like it's working. Alright then, transmission sent. Right, let me send this to my secondary email too, and I'll send it to Director Minai too. She said it can wait until you head back, but I wanted to get it to her as soon as possible, even if it's just one day. After all, this evidence corroborates what Director Minai has been saying for years. Okay, all done. As a precaution, I called the director to confirm she received the files, then closed my PDA. And then I returned the phone to the captain with a skip in my step, thinking of what I could do to repay him for his help. I came back to the Furude Shrine once more, just before dusk. I passed through the remains of the garden in the shrine grounds, and walked through a pine forest growing like weeds. From the top of the hill I could see the entire village stained in a dusky vermilion hue. I carefully checked the rail to make sure it would hold, then leaned out over the edge of the hill. A strong wind blew up from the base of the cliff, running a refreshing chill along my sweaty body. This is the place of destiny. My father left a lot of thoughts here. In the end, my father didn't come here. At first I wondered if he was prioritising the efficiency of the investigation when I asked him to come here again, but that's when I finally realised. Can't come here. This was the hill where a little girl asked my father for help, and his inability to fulfil that promise is a wound that can never heal. Rikafrude, softly whispered the girl's name. One day, long ago, my father told me he met a girl in Hinamizawa who was like an angel, and her childlike heart truly touched him. Then I said I wanted to be friends with the girl. At the time I had no idea how much sorrow those innocent words would inflict on my father. I once again turned to gaze at the village. Looking more closely, there was a section of the field that was greener on one side, indistinguishable from the muddy, algae-filled reservoir beside it. Straw-roofed residential houses still retained their original shape, even though there was no longer anyone living there. Village of the Dead, where the spirits still dwell. A living hell of a tragedy happened here over 20 years ago. The truth of that is still unknown. Rumours and speculations are still flying around, doubting the presence of volcanic gas, but nothing has quite hit the mark. Besides, even if we keep looking, keep searching and eventually find the truth, the lives lost and the time past will never come back. The hopes and dreams of over 2,000 villagers. Those calm, peaceful days that truly existed over 20 years ago. Those are already just visions of the past. Only archaeologists are interested in conducting academic investigations of this place, so there's nothing left to heal the pain and regret with the people who are hurt. But even so, my father has dedicated the rest of his life to shining a light on this incident. Even though he's leaving his job in public security to take the role of principal of the police academy, my father is still pressing onward down the thorny path to return to the past. Hey, Rika, when will my father redeem himself? What does he have to do before he can leave these sad feelings behind and smile from the bottom of his heart? I gently whispered those words to the wind, speaking to the person who might be in the sky now. But of course there was no reply. That too was only for my self-satisfaction. How did this tragedy come to pass? It's impossible for us to find the truth on our own. Wherever you are, reading this, please find the truth. That is our only wish. Miyuki Sorimachi. But even today I'll keep gladly sending these messages, even if they never reach anyone.
Well, folks, that is going to do it for me. I am going to say thank you very much for watching.
Got distracted because I heard a car going by outside. It is very much appreciated, and I do hope that you enjoyed. I will be streaming I will be streaming Near Replicant this Saturday. We're going to be continuing with the story, probably via some side quests, knowing me. Then on Sunday it'll be Destiny 2, where we're going to be doing the latest season of the Splicer stuff. Tuesday will be Final Fantasy XIV, where we're going to be finishing off the Zagnor storyline, and God only knows what I'll be doing after that. Maybe MSQ on a shard, maybe some leveling, we'll see. And then next Thursday will be Higurashi When They Cry, where I will be continuing with, I haven't 100p decided yet, so this is not a, whoops, not set in stone, but okay. Right. Next Thursday we're going to be continuing with Higurashi When They Cry, when we are going to be moving on to the next arc in the I'm gonna say perhaps bonus. No. I'm gonna be continuing with the last arc in the the second to last arc rather I should say, in the like main arc spin-off stories, which is Miyatsukushi Onote, which is an alternate ending to the series, which takes place after Higurashi, instead of Matsuri Bayashi. So it's basically an alternative Matsuri Bayashi. So yeah, take care everybody, thank you very much for watching, it is very much appreciated. Do have a wonderful evening, be excellent to each other, and I shall see you guys on Saturday.